Please.
Welcome to the podcast Compels You, the show where we are given curse categories by our AI overlord, tasked with finding movies that fit in those categories and sharing them with you horror hounds. I'm Bill, and with me as always is my co-host Stacie. How you doing, Stacie?
I am doing great, and it is a very exciting night for us. If you listened all the way to the end of last episode, you'll know that this episode's movie is I Will Never Leave You Alone. And tonight we are incredibly excited that, okay, not only did we climb a whole percentage point in listenership in Costa Rica, please clap, but most importantly, we've got I Will Never Leave You Alone writer-director DW Medoff on the line, who is just now passed the CAPTCHA for us, so we know for sure he's not a bot. It's actually him. In all seriousness, though, DW, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm super good. I'm really great, and just glad to be chatting with some horror hounds, and looking forward to seeing what's up.
You're in the right place. First of all, I want to make sure our listeners know that in addition to I Will Never Leave You Alone, you also wrote and directed Pollen 2023, and they can and should see both of these movies, which are available on the major streamers. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think Pollen is free on Prime now. I'm not positive, but
I think that's how I saw it.
I think I Will Never Leave You Alone is probably like 3.99 still. And I don't know if anybody knows this yet, and it's still under wraps, but we might be getting a DVD.
Oh, cool. Some physical media.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's happening, but I've literally been going back through because the way of getting those movies out, I guess, on DVD is a little bit different of a quality control process. So
Oh,
I'm literally uploading a new export now, and these uploads take like 20 hours. So
Oh,
I would
wow.
imagine. Yeah.
so every time I'm trying to fix one little bug, another like full day. That's neither here nor there.
What else would you like listeners to know about you and your work? I know you just wrapped up filming I'm Your Host. Is that right?
That's our production title of it. I know some articles have been written about it with that title. I really like that title. I'm not sure if that's ultimately what it'll be, but
The good title.
yeah, I'm your host. We finished filming that I want to say mid-November. The coolest thrill ride of my life. I was in Italy for 3 months filming.
Oh, that's amazing.
How was that?
So pre-production for a bunch of weeks and then filming for a bunch of weeks, totally 3 months. How was it? It was the roller coaster of my life. It was so much fun. I met such amazing people. I was scared every day, just trying to be the captain of this really big ship, so to speak. And I was just so scared every day and so honored every day. And I was surrounded by so many people who I wound up trusting so immensely.
Wow.
Yeah, I was invited to be in the conversation with some amazing actors and production designers and artists, just amazing producers running everything. It was just, I think about it sometimes like I'm awake from a dream when I'm back home in Atlanta.
Oh, it sounds like a dream.
Yeah, it was.
I only know how much work it is to like write a book, but like when it's a movie, it's kind of like I imagine the conductor playing the entire orchestra.
It's a little bit like that. I didn't write this one, so there was also like a really big, uh, I felt like a burden to make sure that like I honored the script that someone had written with, reading it with my director hat and saying, how do we make this vision of a story for an audience to watch? Because, I'm a writer too, but reading a script can be really fun and really engaging, but then once you try to translate it yourself to a visual medium, there's gaps, there's things that you just need to amend to make sure that they fit. And I didn't change much, but I was thrilled to be given the chance to like touch a couple things up to make sure that they all visually tied together. And that was the first time I directed something someone else wrote. So, like I said, it felt like a real burden to make sure, in a good way, a burden.
Great responsibility,
Yeah, exactly.
to quote Spider-Man.
That's how I felt, though.
Did you have the writer there with you?
He came to set for a couple days, and I can be such a tornado going from person to person to person, checking in on everything, making sure everything is good, being really supportive of people that I can sometimes be hard to maybe approach for some people. And I love to give everyone time, and I love to give everyone my energy. And I spent as much time as I could with him, but I think he was happy. I hope, watching from Video Village with the producers and some of the cast. But I had lunch with him one day. We got to talk about his inspiration, his reasons for writing the story, his background. I mean, it was just such a cool guy. I couldn't have been happier getting the chance to meet him. And he told me he was happy with the changes we made to get the story done. And I was like, oh, thank you for saying that. Yeah.
So you didn't have to ever like take a big fat Sharpie, for example, and drag it across a scene and then make extended eye contact with the writer.
Oh, wow.
Never had to do that. However, we filmed scenes that will never see the light of day.
Sure.
It's just,
Yeah.
I worked with, the editor I worked with was so good. And he nicknamed himself the Butcher. He nicknamed himself the Butcher. And
Nice.
I was like, well, you're going to be called that from now. And he's done some amazing stuff. Like he did, like Pig, if you guys saw that, with
Oh,
the
yeah.
Nicolas Cage
Nicolas
movie.
Cage, yeah.
Did that, and he did Don't Breathe 2, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
So he's, and like a Pet Cemetery, Bloodline. Yeah, he's got just, I'm pretty sure I'm not misspeaking on these. I know what movies they are, and maybe I'm the wrong titles, but he's incredible.
Speaking of incredible, I wanted to ask you, Jackie Earle Haley's in this, correct?
Woof, what a guy. What an awesome guy.
He's one of my favorites. I mean, I've only seen him in a few things, but what a lasting impression. Like, I go back to like Little Children, which is the first thing I saw him in, which is just like super complex character, super creepy in like a strange way, kind of.
Yeah. Oh.
And then I think back to his last horror movie, like proper horror movie, which I think was the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which,
That's probably his last true horror movie.
Yeah.
Like, I think of some of his scenes as Rorschach and Watchmen.
Right.
As borderline horror, in that
Sure.
the elements of them are so thrilling. If you had have told that story a little different, he's an absolute menace, and he's terrifying. So no, it was really cool to work with him because he's done a lot of physical movements that make him unique, and at the same time he's done a lot of acting. He's done a lot of acting. He's an Academy Award nominated actor.
Right.
He's just like, he's a force. He's also extremely kind.
That's good to hear.
He's also got an extremely clear vision of his character. And I could call him a mentor to me. I learned so much from him. Because he's also a director, he's also a writer, he's all these things. His job on set is to be his his role.
Sure.
But at the same time, me and him got dinner, me and him hung out. I can't imagine having someone else other than him as that character. I hope nobody hates the movie, but if you like the movie, just remember he was an instrumental friend to me and helped guide me in a lot of ways. So I'm incredibly lucky to have a person like that in my life.
I'm glad to hear he's a good dude too. There's too many times where like I've looked up to like actors or directors or something, then you hear these terrible stories and you're like, oh geez, really?
Like
I didn't want to hear that
kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why it's a stereotype.
Yeah.
I think if people watch the next movie and they meet me, they'll be like, oh, he's a little too nice to have done that. So I hope no one ever is like, I wish he was meaner.
Right.
Man, you make dark movies. Like,
yeah.
But
yeah,
I'm not surprised because they also have heart and empathy.
I think we all, I mean, I was going to say we all do. I think we all should.
We
Right.
all should.
I mean, I think empathy is, a learned skill that we've gotten from, I'm very lucky. I grew up with really great supportive parents, and
Hmm.
they were both like in the grade school level. So I think, my mom was a kindergarten teacher, and my dad became an elementary school principal. And I think I grew up in a house that was like really fostering to my very juvenile art dreams. You know, they wanted me to grow up and be, Mr. Successful. And, I did go to school for business, and, they were all proud of that. And then at one point I was like, I'm making movies. And they're like, well, great. That's awesome. There were short films at the time. And I was like doing mainly comedy is how I started. And then, yeah, I started doing horror, and it like started doing better. And for this third movie, I was like, I got to quit my day job to do this. And they were like, do you feel confident to do it? And I said, yeah,
Well,
I think if I don't ever take this chance,
That's a big deal. Quitting your
it's
day
a big
job's got to
deal.
be like one of those milestones, right? As like an artist of any type, you know?
yeah. But I have so many friends who are all of my friends essentially are artists
Hmm.
who, they've never committed to like a business 9 to 5, which is never 9 to 5. It's always more.
Right, right.
And, so, they're so free. At the same time, it's such a nerve-wracking lifestyle.
Sure.
And I'm feeling that now. Big time. I'm not getting a steady paycheck anymore, and it's a little scary, but I think I'm hoping good things are coming, and got a plan if they don't.
Fingers crossed.
We're all hoping.
Thank you.
Turning our attention more to kind of horror in general, what were some of your favorites in 2024? Favorite horror movies? Do you have any that pop
Good
immediately
year.
to mind?
You
Yeah,
even have
I think
time
it
to
was.
watch movies.
All right, 2024. I'm going to start with just saying this. Telluride Horror Festival was 2023, I think.
Hmm.
Holy shit, what a lineup.
Yeah, yeah. I am notorious for not watching a lot of movies. I'm really crappy, so I didn't watch a lot when I was there. So I made sure to watch the rest when I did. The movie I watched when I was there is called Frogman.
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys have heard of Frogman.
Like the one I haven't seen yet.
Frogman was dope. It was really cool.
Awesome.
It's so worth watching. And I followed them on Instagram, and the guy who made it, Anthony, seems like I met him there. He's a really cool dude. Um, yeah, that movie was it was wild, and I was in a theater, and sometimes horror can be really fun.
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be this heavy, depressing kind of stuff, which I do gravitate towards. I really do.
Right, right.
But there's a whole part of me that's like, well, let's also have a good time. And that horror is definitely it's a cryptid, it's a friend story. It's great. Wholeheartedly recommend that. I don't know if it's 2024, but because I saw it 2023,
Yeah,
but
we'll count it.
yeah.
We'll
And
figure
then
it.
the other movies I wanted to see there, that it took me till 2024 was, and I still haven't seen it. Coffee Table. I really want to see the Coffee
Oh
Table.
my god.
Was it good?
In my opinion, yes, it was good, and I'm going to say something about it, I think,
Okay.
in relation to your film, so we'll all be waiting with bated breath for
Oh,
that.
okay.
We'll
Okay.
save it.
Okay. And then I also wanted to see, so this one, Late Night with the Devil.
Yes.
Uh
I
huh.
thoroughly enjoyed Late Night with the Devil.
Oh, yeah.
And I was so happy, like knowing their trajectory of making these small horrors, like learning and practicing and doing, because I've never seen them, but I assume with everything, you're going to get better. That's for me. I mean,
Sure.
I don't mean to like insult them in any way by saying that, but like once that movie came out, it was like, yes, you can go from this to this to boom, it can happen. And I was so happy, like just seeing small filmmakers make that happen. And I also love that movie. That girl was terrifying, and like you guys have seen it, right? I'm not
Yep.
ruining anything.
Yes.
Spoiler: turn your music off for a second. But like the way his wife played into the story, and
Oh
like
my
the
god.
little reflections of her throughout. I mean, it was, especially towards the end. That one towards the end was like, oh god, and it was
Uh-huh.
it was heartbreaking and scary. And I was like, wow, this is a movie.
Why am I not surprised that's the element that you picked up on
Oh
after
yeah, of
seeing
course.
your movies?
I'm a super. I gravitate towards that part of it. And then I don't know if this was 2024, but I watched it in 2025. But I'm going to count it towards 2024 for the sake of this conversation.
Sure.
You got to see Talk to Me.
Oh
Hell
yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
I didn't see it for a. I want. It is so good.
Do you know the origin story about those guys?
YouTube guys, right? That's all I really
Two
know.
New Zealander YouTubers who were like popular and then they got demonetized, but like they made this A24 picture. Who knew that could
Incredible.
ever be possible? Like,
Yeah.
I was so happy for everyone involved in that movie.
I love that. I think at first I was like, "Oh, these YouTubers can do it, so anybody can do it." But I don't know if sometimes I think like, when I thought that I was a little like prejudicial of being like, "Well, they're just YouTubers." So was I, just trying to make
Yeah.
these little YouTube things. So again, it's just like super cool to be able to use the word demonetize, but like it makes me think of the democratization
Mm-hmm.
of filmmaking, right? Like it's good to have the big companies give you $10 million to make a movie, but like if you have a good idea and people believe in you and like vote with their dollars, so to speak. I believe a lot in voting with your dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Movies like Talk to Me can get made. We all follow. I don't want to say we follow what A24 does, but like we all kind of do. When
Oh
A24 is
yeah.
like, this is a good story, almost every single time we're like, you're right.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a great story.
Very few misses for sure.
And I will say the ending of Talk to Me was one of the best endings of something I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Endings are so hard, and I'm so picky about them on this show.
Can I talk about an ending I didn't love, but a movie I do
Please.
still really
Oh
like?
yes.
I hate being negative, and I know your show is gonna get in so much trouble, and I'm gonna get
Hmm.
in so much trouble. Can we talk about Act 3 of Hereditary?
Sure.
Oh wow. You're going for it here.
I think the first two acts of Hereditary are absolute brilliant, like just
Uh-huh.
incredible.
Agreed.
Third act kind of loses me because it just ramps up so
It's
hard.
in your face.
It ramps up really hard.
Yeah.
It's in your face. And I get why a lot of people like it in the age of like needing uh, you know, gratification for things. And I wonder like again, this is nothing against Ari Aster's writing or filmmaking. I think he's incredible. It's just that the act three didn't do much for me in the fact that like it felt like such a jump in violence, but maybe that's the thing. Maybe as I'm talking through it, that's the cool thing
I mean, it
about it.
definitely has memorable visuals. I think that's what it was. The third act was just memorable. Like I can remember all that stuff just
Oh
because it's
yeah.
so. Yep. Yep. That's all you have to
And
do, right?
then when she goes up in there, yeah, no, those are incredible
Yeah.
visuals.
But I know what you mean. Yeah, it definitely ramps up. It's just done
Wild.
so well in the first two acts. Yeah, it takes its time, but it's in such like a deliberate manner that it just I don't know. It gets under your skin the whole time.
Yeah. Oh, then do you want to talk about Under Your Skin? Or is it Under the Skin?
Is that with Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah. I think it's an A24 movie, but it's like one of their earlier ones,
Yes, it
maybe?
was an early one. I have not seen it yet. We've talked about covering it.
It's a weird one. It's a
Okay.
weird one for sure.
I think we have to cover it on the podcast.
Definitely some interesting perspective on and just things that I try to watch for and learn. Definitely some interesting perspective on what it is probably. I hate not knowing the right words to say this, but difficulties of being a woman in this world. And I think, spoiler alert, sorry guys, it's a lot of her characters trying to learn that.
Okay.
It's a weird movie told in a really weird way with a really interesting story to it.
Awesome. Adding
So
it to the
Okay,
definitely
that
list.
recommend.
definitely sounds like a definitely watch for Stacie. I'm gonna figure out where to cue that one up.
I think you might dig it. It's a weird movie, so don't go into it thinking it's going to be a slugfest of a
Yeah.
wild time. It's weird,
I
but I
like
enjoyed
weird.
it. I like weird too.
Okay, listeners, I don't like weird in real life when you come up and talk to me, but I do like weird in movies. I just want to be really clear about that. I'm actually pretty
Boundaries.
shy in real life.
Boundaries.
Lots of boundaries. Okay. Especially when I go to Costa Rica.
Oh yeah, we're gonna be mobbed. We're gonna be like
Can't
the
even
Beatles when we
walk
go
down the
there.
street there.
Be
Jeez.
careful, guys.
Yeah, seriously.
They're actually really nice, and they've started like sending us messages, commenting,
Oh yeah,
and they're the nicest people on earth.
I
for
love
sure.
that.
So, in honor of your upcoming feature release production title, I'm your host, which we hear is a game show slasher of sorts. We thought we'd make a little quickfire horror trivia game, to break the ice, which I think we've already broken, melted.
You're gonna freeze it back up because I'm gonna do bad.
Excellent.
I'm gonna do bad.
It'll be painless, which is not a
Yeah.
legally binding guarantee. But it's called We're Your Host Now.
Oh boy.
And the general idea is to just give really short answers as fast as you can. But Bill's going to explain to you the rules. Go ahead, Bill.
No, you pretty much explained it. It's just a rapid fire. Give the first answer that pops in your head. You will be graded. The grades mean nothing. So ultimately, the game means nothing. But
we don't know what the time limit is. We're all going to find out together.
Correct.
So first question, what's your favorite fictional haunted house?
Oh, fictional haunted house. I mean, I guess the one here in Atlanta, Netherworld.
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's like a walkthrough haunted house. I mean, that's...
Is it really and truly haunted, supposedly?
No, it's like one of those walkthrough Halloween type things. I mean, that's where my head went for like an experiential haunted house.
I like it.
That is a perfectly valid answer.
Question 2. What is your favorite place in the world to watch a movie?
Oh, my couch.
Nice.
I mean, look, in the
one
days
of us.
in the day of wishing we could return to the cinema, I also say this about sports. Do I have time to go on my tangents? You can always cut me off on my tangents.
Sure, go crazy. Yeah.
I will say the best seat in the house for any sports game, which I'm not a huge sports fan anyway, but I do like some sports. The best seat in the house is at home.
Sure.
So, I do love, oh God, Alien Romulus I saw in 4D.
Ooh, nice.
It was a fine movie. I hated 4D.
What is the fourth D?
It is movement. It is movement.
God.
These seats move.
Man.
And I gotta say, I was more focused on like not losing my popcorn than the movie. So the guy next to me in the beginning was like, "You ever done this before?" And I was like, "No, but you asked me like you have. So what's up?" He's like, "It's more than you think."
Oh my
I
God.
remember as a kid being at Universal Studios, and they had some very early 4D stuff, and it was janky as hell. And
would like poke you in the seat.
It was weird. There was like water that would come down. Your sheet, there was smells. I think they piped smells into the theater. It was weird, man.
This one that I remember just shakes wild.
Yeah.
Like I remember the Mufasa trailer came on, and I was like, "This is not necessary for Mufasa."
Oh, for trailers too?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
And then it
I was
shoots
just thinking
water.
That movie was not necessary, but okay.
Yeah,
I'm probably in the short group for this, but I loved Prometheus. Romulus was fine, but I should see Romulus without 4D, but I really like Prometheus.
Gotcha.
I liked Romulus. What I'm wondering is do they have alien smells? Because that sounds awful. I imagine they smell as bad as they look. Especially when the little one comes out.
Oh man. Yeah, you don't want that.
That's some halitosis right there. We're playing a game. Back to the game. So
back to the game, Stacie.
I really do love going to the theaters. So my question is, what is the worst movie theater behavior you've ever witnessed?
Oh, bright cell phones.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I get it. You need to text. We are in an age of not being able to concentrate, and I'm guilty of it.
You're
and I
so sympathetic.
Yeah, sympathetic as heck for that. You know what? Just don't talk, please, and turn your brightness down. That's the key, because everyone's pretty smart to not talk on the phone, but they're not smart enough, and not smart enough, but they want to text. They
must be better in Atlanta.
It's fine on my couch.
Oh, good point. Good point.
Me and my friends go see movies. Like sometimes we all go. It's been a while since like we've seen a movie. It's like a big group. Like we saw Madam Web in theaters.
Oh wow.
I don't like to be negative about anything, so the way I'll put it was a very funny night.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you get something out of it, right? As long as you get some laughs at least.
I mean, it was the opening weekend. It was us and two other people in the theater at like a 7 p.m. showing, and I was like, if this
Ouch.
is the state of this, I mean, it wasn't like as good as the other Marvel movies, we'll say, but like it should have still had
Yeah,
people there.
you would
But
think so.
whatever.
Yeah. So when it comes to streaming scary movies, like it sounds like you probably do if you're watching a lot of them on the couch, lights on or lights off?
It doesn't bother me
Oh,
either
okay.
way.
No preference.
I typically would say lights on because I love to like snack while I'm watching.
Nice.
I'm not scared to do it lights off. I promise I'm not scared at all.
That's what they all say.
Yeah. But yeah, I think probably like whatever my normal lighting setup is.
Fair enough.
I could tell you more about it. I mean, if you want to know, but curtains down. We still have our Christmas tree light up because it's got really nice ambiance
Oh, I
to
like
it.
that.
And then I
Cozy.
have my light up here is much more like yellowy, tungsteny, and I'll turn everything else off, and then I got my TV to watch. So it's usually like a
Nice.
pretty good atmosphere.
Lovely. Best Scream movie. I think you have about a 1 out of 3 chance of stating a correct answer.
Ooh.
Well, I've only seen a couple of them, so Scream won.
That was
I
one of the
mean,
correct answers.
I haven't seen anything past Scream 3. I
No?
probably should have. What they just did Scream 7 or they just did Scream 6?
Is that out yet? Well, they're making, I think there's the Scream 7 is upcoming, but
Yeah.
Okay.
it may not be titled Scream 7. But
Yeah.
yeah, Scream 6 was the last theater
Yeah.
release
Proper one.
that I
So
know
the
of.
question, if I could grade your question, I think the question should have been which of the three movies? Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legends. Go.
Ooh.
No, didn't think about that.
That should have been the question. No offense.
My innermost heart actually goes Urban Legends, strangely enough. I
So
kind
does
of loved that movie growing up. I haven't
yeah.
watched it in probably 15 years, but
I think
that
I need
even
to
goes back.
rewatch it.
Yeah, I think I need to rewatch it too because I couldn't give you an honest answer between all three of them.
I just remember it being fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was scary. I use the picture when I try to like, when I write a script, I have a lookbook that goes with it to try to like help people envision. And I'll use the picture sometimes of the killer from that movie, which is like, it's got that like axe, big
The
jacket,
parka.
the parka. Yeah, the
Yep.
parka. So, yeah, I love that image. But I also love Jennifer Love Hewitt on a street with the camera looking
Come
down,
and get
screaming.
me. Or
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, she says, "Come and get me." What are you waiting for?
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, it's
iconic.
iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And Scream, obviously written by one of the best to ever do horror,
Right.
Wes Craven. And I mean, the opening scene of that movie
Oh, amazing.
I mean, it's brilliant. It's just
Yeah,
pure brilliance. So,
for sure. Last quickfire question, and I'm going to switch it up a little bit. The Halloween series or the Friday the 13th series? I was going to
there's a good
say
question.
the original films, but that's a no-brainer. So I'm going to go with the series.
I would say you didn't say original, but I'm gonna go Halloween. Um, Gosh, I love Michael Myers. I had a Michael Myers mask when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
I loved those movies when I was a kid.
Same here. That's the first one I ever saw, and I saw it way too young, and it's always been embedded in my head as like my favorite horror movie ever. But the series
Yeah,
as a whole, though, that's questionable compared to like Friday the 13th, depending on your
I don't
likeness of
watch
campiness, you know?
I don't watch a lot of like late sequels or later iterations of movies. I'm kind of a snob like that. I'll usually only stick with the first movie, maybe a second if it's good, unless it's Star Wars, which I will watch everything Star
Uh-huh.
Wars. I
Of
will watch
course.
the good and the bad. I love Star Wars, but that's a different story. Halloween mainly just because I love Michael Myers. I mean,
Yeah.
Jason also like my Halloween costumes were Jason and Michael Myers
Oh,
growing
I
up,
love it.
like interchangeably for years. And
It's amazing.
gosh, yeah, I love both of those. I do really like the Jason franchise, but I
Hmm.
also love the Halloween franchise. And I'm thinking of what is that? There was the Blue Oyster Cult song
Don't Fear
in
the Reaper.
Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yep.
And there's like a series of songs that I like early in my life that I was introduced to because of those movies.
Oh, interesting.
not nearly as impactful as Tony Hawk and me going down the rabbit hole of punk. But
Oh, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2? That was like
yeah,
Mighty Mighty Boss Tones and
uh,
I
I
can't
can't
remember. Real Big
remember.
Fish, probably.
AFI had a song in
AFI.
there.
Oh, yeah.
There's some really good music in there. Oh,
Yes.
maybe Millencolin, MXPX, maybe.
MXPX for sure, yeah.
Yeah, there was a Millencolin song in there. I think No Cigar, but I don't remember. There's so
Oh, and
many.
there was a Primus song. There was a random Primus song, which I'm the biggest Primus fan ever.
Was it the My Name is Mud?
No, Jerry's a race car driver.
Jerry's a race car driver. Okay.
Have we ever
Totally.
talked about Primus, Bill? Because I was also
No.
a Primus fan.
That's why I started playing bass when I was like in 5th grade. So, yeah, oh yeah.
Basically same, yeah.
Yeah.
What a dude. What a great bass player. All right,
For
sorry,
sure.
I go on tangents really easily.
That wraps up the game. Do you want to score that real quick, Bill?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah, amazing. I think that was the score we're going to
Amazing.
go with. Amazing. Yeah, we're
All
pretty
right.
Well,
pretty informal.
you said beginning that the grade didn't matter, so I guess nothing matters. Okay.
Oh
here we
man, yeah.
It's
It's a
nihilism.
nihilistic end to the game.
Sure is,
Yeah.
yeah. So, tonight we're bringing our listeners part 2 of our series, All Alone in a Haunted House. Our series of movies, a series of 2 that is, in which the protagonist is all alone in a haunted house. In part 1 of the series, we enjoyed a lively discussion of the 2022 found footage horror comedy Deadstream, which took frightening and hilarious aim at influence culture. We recommend this one, DW. Do you enjoy horror comedy for that matter? Because you mentioned that you started off making comedy short films, if I'm not misquoting you.
Yeah, no, I started off in comedy, and I heard. I mean, if you want me to go deeper, I can't. But yeah, I think I always gravitated towards really dark comedy. Like my favorite short film, I wrote it with my friends, and my friend directed it. Was about a guy who survived the suicide cult. And when I say survive,
Oh.
it was the Ascension Day, and he survives accidentally, and it's really grim. It's really funny, and I don't know if you guys know Paul Walter Hauser. He was the lead.
No, I'm not familiar.
He's awesome.
Is this a
Great
place
guy.
where we can go see it?
Yeah, I mean,
there?
I'll send you the link later. It's called Sheep, and it's on
cool.
YouTube.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, Bill and I are kind of split on horror comedy.
I don't see a lot of them. I think the problem for me is that there's just not a lot of good horror comedy.
There isn't.
Yeah.
It's a rare and beautiful thing.
You kind of just have to pick whether your movie's a comedy with horror elements,
Right.
or a horror movie that has a comic character.
Yes.
For
That's
sure.
what works. That's
Right.
what works.
Easier said than done.
But I mean, like, could there be a really good union of them that I don't know about? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think it's, just like some people do these trailers, right? They take these like beloved movies and they put a horror soundtrack to it.
Oh, right.
Or
Yeah.
edit it a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
It's that, right? Like you can take Ross from Friends, take the track of the laugh track out, and all of a sudden he sounds like a deranged serial killer.
Oh, yeah.
What was the one we were gonna do, Bill? It was My Girl. My Girl.
Oh, yeah,
this
My
old
Girl with
movie.
a really dark soundtrack, and him getting attacked by bees in slow
'Cause the
motion.
kid dies. It could be a
Yeah.
horror movie.
I was just talking about My Girl yesterday, and the
Oh,
scene
wow.
where she's like, "He's not wearing his glasses.
Yeah.
He's missing his glass." Like, I mean, if you put that in context
Oh,
of like
yeah.
someone's coming and he's not wearing his glasses. He's not wearing his glasses.
My favorite actually was Toy Story mixed with Requiem for a Dream. That was my absolute favorite cut I've ever seen. And they zoom in on Woody's eyes and it's like dilating, and it's just all of the little tricks he uses in Requiem for a Dream mixed with the soundtrack, that like intense. Oh, it's incredible.
I just Googled it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. Anyway.
That's the answer for me for like, is there good horror comedy? I think it's really hard because a lot of, Jordan Peele even has a quote. I think, forgive me if it's not him, because he was, him and, in Key and Peele, those guys are comedy geniuses.
Right.
But I think it's maybe he did, maybe someone said it about him. I don't know. Horror is just comedy with a different score. And
interesting. Yeah, I've heard that same quote. Uh-huh.
It's a little bit of editing switches to really ramp up how people are going to see it. But I mean, they're both set up punchline.
Yeah.
And not the longer your punchline, but the more misdirects in the setup, the bigger the scare, the bigger the laugh. So
Danny McBride's another one. He came obviously from a comedy background and did the latest Halloween trilogy.
Oh,
forgive me, I haven't seen the newest
Oh yeah.
one, but that's his group, right?
Yeah.
David Gordon Green.
David Gordon Green and
Yeah.
and him. So there's something about horror and comedy, the people that work within those realms, that there's kind of a lot of cross pollination, it seems like.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about tonight's movie a little bit.
That's boring. Let's talk about these good ones.
Well, we happen to like it.
I appreciate it.
We are, of course, talking about our guest, DW Medoff's 2023 supernatural horror, I Will Never Leave You Alone. Which, as soon as I read that title, I was like, that sounds like a great threat.
Yeah.
I Will Never Leave You Alone stars the excellent Kenneth Trujillo as protagonist Richard. And I think this may now be the movie that he's best known for.
Maybe. He's a great actor.
Also starring is Katerina Eichenberger, who also appears in the 2024 thriller My Nanny Stole My Life, which is about exactly what the title says. Also starring Christopher Genovese, who also played Freddy Krueger in the amazing 6-minute 2023 short film A Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Comes.
Oh my God, you've seen that?
Exactly what the title sounds like. Bill, have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. No, I'm excited though. I saw that in his
stop
credits.
recording and watch it now, and then no one would ever know.
Yeah, there you
Done
go.
that before.
Bye.
Tall and tan and young and lovely.
Chris and Sarah are amazing. I met them. I used to teach sketch comedy in Atlanta, and I met them in my class. And I mean, I've been following them ever since. And I talk to Chris a lot, and I think Sarah's on her way to being one of the best directors of either horror or comedy, whatever she wants to do. She's absolutely super talented.
Awesome.
And I think this called Freddy Comes, it's not even close to her best work.
Oh wow.
I get it's really good.
Pretty good.
Her short that came either a couple after it, I don't remember what it's called, but it was so good that I sent it to the Telluride horror people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we gotta have this at our fest."
Oh wow.
Awesome.
That's great.
So I'm a huge fan of her and Chris Genovese, and there's this whole little like Atlanta community of friends, and they're mostly in comedy, and they do these like quarterly shows, and I try to go to all of them. There's a lot of really good people making stuff in Atlanta, and yeah, I don't know how to get everyone in the world to watch it, but hopefully someday everyone will notice this little art collective that's been happening here.
For our listeners who want to see this movie, it is ribald. Go watch it on YouTube. I mean, obviously finish listening to this episode first, but then maybe
watch
cue it up. But he is also the comic relief in this movie, really. It has some, though, Mike.
Yeah.
Handyman Mike.
Yeah, I think he's definitely he's such a good actor, and he's so naturally funny and comforting in real life. He brought a levity in that movie that is so needed from someone.
He absolutely stole the show for me.
One of the first negative criticisms I got was, sorry, that's a spoiler alert.
We'll cut that.
Yeah, forgot I said anything.
Back to I Will Never Leave You Alone, which also stars Emma Ann Wedemeyer as the Crone. If I'm not mistaken, she is best known as a stunt performer, and she was a stunt double for the star Sarah Catherine Hook in 2022 supernatural teen drama series First Kill. It's created by American author V.E. Schwab, who's really popular in the horror reading community.
Yeah, she's great. I mean, she's also just like an incredible dancer, and working with her and like talking to her about how her movements would be and her design, like I really like to give people opportunity to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So when she brought the way the witch would like kind of move, it was just
so unique.
So cool. Yeah, it was
I
really
love
cool to watch. And one of the things of being like a mega low budget movie, everything is hard to get aligned. We don't have VFX in the movie. Everything's practical. Our special effects person built the mask in her garage. So I know there's
cool.
There's things that people are like, man, I wish the mask was better. I wish this was better. And we're like, I wish these things. Like, yeah, me too.
You lose something when you do that, though. Honestly, I mean, practical effects they pop out so much better, especially in this day and age where there's so much CGI. Like practical effects, they just have a creepiness about them that it's hard to put your finger on.
I prefer practical. So I think what I meant by yeah, me too is like I wish I had three cameras on the same
Sure,
shot to
sure.
be able to mimic those things and to know how to do it. And I wish we had like a tailor on set to be able to custom fit her outfit. And I wish
Right.
we had more money. We had one mask, so we had to be super careful with
Oh,
it. And
wow.
Wow.
and our name's Chloe Grass. She's incredible. She did Pollen as well. She's just so talented. And I wish we could have given her more money than we did. I can't even tell you how little it was.
Oh,
I just wish we could have done stuff like that. And what I am incredibly proud of is we made this movie for almost nothing. And there's just a bunch of like I know everyone in that movie, including the cast, crew, everyone knows each other. So it was really a bunch of people coming together.
Well, it does not look like almost nothing to us, just so you know.
yeah.
And we
I
watch a lot of
appreciate that.
movies. A lot of movies.
I think that's the problem though is like it's such a great problem to have that like people watched like I would watch what people were saying about it on Letterboxd and then see what someone like the other things that they were reviewing and it's like well of course you're watching this movie which it costs a little bit less than a Toyota Corolla that's been
Oh, wow.
used versus the Boogeyman and which had like
Sure.
millions of dollars of budget and all these other ones so it was like
See,
I could tell you how we did some of these shots, but when I do anything else and I was like, oh yeah, you can just do it this way. They're like, no, 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 that's not how it works in making a big movie, a big budget movie. I'm like, okay,
Right.
but like,
I think Bill and I are harder on big movies with huge budgets that I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah, for sure.
how did they miss this? What did they squander? You know?
Yeah.
And it's also a good message to get out to our listeners that if you're reviewing movies, please take that into consideration.
yeah. And I think something, I keep trying to say I don't like to be negative about movies or negative about things in general. Having made short films and then having made feature length stuff, it really changes the way, and I'm sure you guys too, with making a podcast and anybody who's in the arts at all, it changes the way you dislike something, right? Like you can notice things that are difficult, notice things that were like, oh, this didn't hit right, this didn't work. But at the same time, you have this huge appreciation for the amount of effort that goes into these. Someone once told me making a movie is a Herculean effort. And I was like, wow, it's true. It's a hard thing. I mean, there's plenty of things harder in this world. But yeah, it's so hard to make something like I just watched Nosferatu. What's the point of not giving that movie, a 10 out of 10? But, my actual, thing would be much, much lower. But, I mean, that's such a amazing piece of art we get to have for what it's worth, even if, I don't like some of the dialogue. I don't like some, it's so hard to make something even at that humongous budget, right?
Sure.
It's so hard to do anything. And, it's, that I did see in theaters with a group of friends and it was cool. Sorry, tangent, tangent, tangent.
I think they could have made the count talk a little bit faster. With that budget. But
Yeah, they definitely could have.
we already mentioned it, but the world premiere of this movie, I Will Never Leave You Alone, was in October 2023 at the Telluride Horror Show Film Festival, along with Late Night with the Devil. Other notable cohort mates included The Coffee Table, one of my faves, Suitable Flesh, and When Evil Lurks. All of those are,
Yes.
some fan favorites. Like, first of all, holy shit, what I wouldn't have done to attend at that. How did it feel to, screen your film with those folks?
Yeah, that's got to be
Breathing the
amazing.
rare air.
I mean, I could tell you everything about my experience going to Telluride. It was just everything was great. It was my first time seeing the Rocky Mountains. Flew into Denver, drove in, got there at night. I got to meet up with the Telluride team, and they were so cool. And like, I mean, you hang out with some hard people, and sometimes it's like being with the cool kids. And that's what it felt like being in Telluride with the big ski town. I got there at night, and when I tell you, I asked them, I was like, "Where are the mountains?" They're like, "You could throw a tennis ball and hit it."
Wow.
And I said,
That's amazing.
I don't believe you. It's dark. It's pitch black out there. I didn't
Yeah.
believe them. So I walk home. By the way, I was exhausted walking home because of the elevation, as if I couldn't breathe.
Sure.
And then the next morning, I wake up and I was like, oh, the mountains are right there. And I know this sounds stupid. It's called the Box Canyon, and you're boxed in by these humongous mountains. And I didn't realize you can't see at night because there's mountains right there. And then when I woke up, I was like, wow, I'm stupid.
I'm sure that's a common experience arriving there.
And then, yeah, the movies that were there. There's so many. I mentioned, you mentioned Where Evil Lurks, Coffee Table, Late Night with the Devil, and the other one that really came to mind was Frogman. And the shorts blocks there were incredible. I mean, just next level good. To be part of that again was, like I said earlier, it's like I shouldn't be here. This is not for humans to be standing with, and I was.
That's just imposter syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're one of them. I don't know why you're talking to us, but yeah, you're one of them.
Because you guys are great. You guys reached out, and I was super glad. I listened to your episode on First Omen.
Oh my God, how embarrassing.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of people who worked on my last movie worked on First Omen, and I was like, I'd love to hear what you guys think. And what was the name of the girl that you guys kept saying you love her name? Tiger Free Tiger.
Yep,
I forget
Nell
what her
Tiger
name
Free.
is.
Nell Tiger Free. She's incredible.
She is incredible. I remembered her from Game of Thrones too. I didn't remember when I watched, but after the movie, I was like, wait, who was she? Oh, that's another 2024 movie I really liked, First Omen.
I think that was my top 2024, actually. It was very early in the year. I kind of felt it was like, yeah.
Oh,
Really?
God, there were so many good ones.
Yeah.
What a great year.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I had lots of people who were on set, like wearing their, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but like a lot of big movies will give all of the crew like a crew gift. And that crew gift was like this puffer vest that said the First Omen on it. And there were just
sweet.
a bunch of people in our movie that were wearing those First Omen ones. I forget what else everybody was wearing that I knew too. But yeah, all these people in Italy like work on a ton of stuff.
Right.
And they wear the best crew gear. They do really have they had great crew gear. Like in Atlanta, I have friends who work on like Stranger Things and all these Marvel shows that are here, and they're working on those. And they rep some of the cool gear they get, which is always
sweet.
fun.
That's awesome.
It feels like the First Omen may have employed like the entire city. I don't know what the population of Rome is.
Yeah, that seemed massive.
That's how it felt.
So one of my favorite people on set for this new movie, she and her husband are the costumers, and they did the costuming for the Italy portions of some of the show, like which was, I don't know if you remember the scene. You guys talked about it. Like there's that big party scene, and then there's them running through the streets. She was telling me it was like impossible to find enough 70s clothes.
Oh, wow.
For people, and she was telling me about how that process went, and I was like, it was so cool to talk to them. And like they had other movies that they had to do where there were even bigger problems and how they did those. So
that's fascinating.
Shout out to Fatah and Claudette. They are geniuses, and they're such kind people.
I Will Never Leave You Alone enjoyed a limited U.S. theatrical and simultaneous streaming release by Dark Sky Films in October of 2024. It was released theatrically in one other market that I could find, and that is Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States, which our listeners know I like to talk about. In that market, your movie was released as Reincarnation, Return of the Witch.
No, really? I love that.
Or Reinkarnacja, Возвращение ведьмы, because since we did Night Watch, I keep getting these messages saying that y'all want to hear me speak Russian again, and I don't know what that's about.
Oh, я tu понимаешь по-русски?
Yeah, chit-chit.
I don't speak Russian. That's all. I grew up in Philly around a lot of like Russian friends, and that's pretty much all I got.
You sold it, man. I was believing.
Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that to people with that one, and then they're like, "Well," they start doing their thing, and I'm like, "I was just kidding."
I'm out.
Just smile and nod at that.
Yeah, there you go.
So we here at the Podcast Compels You recommend that if you really want to self-destruct, you pair this movie with the coffee table, and you chase it with mouthwash. If you know, you know. DW, I am now going to do a quick spoiler-free plot synopsis of your movie, I Will Never Leave You Alone, if I can get the title right. right here in front of you in real time. Oh my God, no pressure at all. So Richard, an inmate with a dark past, who is unable to speak, is up for parole and gets what seems to be a pretty sweet deal. 6 days in a supposedly haunted house, clearing out some restless spirits in exchange for freedom. What an amazing stroke of luck for him, right? There's no way that could possibly go wrong, right?
Right?
Wrong. What starts off as a parolee's dream gig of basically house sitting, albeit with some weird, new agey stipulations, quickly turns into a nightmare as Richard realizes he might not be all alone in the house after all. Will Richard survive the 6 days and rejoin the free world? Or will his residence be perhaps where his road to redemption dead ends? We hope that you will watch the movie to find out. If you haven't yet, it's available on most of the big streamers. Now, I did see this movie, I want you to know, as soon as it was available on streaming a few months ago at the time of this recording, because I'm constantly on the lookout for haunted house stories. But Bill is more of a slasher, home invasion, psychological horror thriller guy, which is fine.
No judgment.
I know, Bill, that you had not seen this movie until recently. So per our tradition, Bill is going to name 3 things that he expected to see in your movie, things which he guessed based on what? Very little information, right? Bill?
IMDb
Title,
description. Yes.
title,
Be very short.
2-sentence IMDb synopsis, maybe a thumbnail for the cover.
Correct.
All right, Bill, you're up.
Oh, man, this was not one of my finer efforts.
So embarrassing for Bill. It's great.
I know, it's fantastic. So, my first thing I thought I'd see in this movie, a character that gets spooked by what turns out to be a non-threatening animal. Second thing, the main character suffers a leg injury that hampers his ability to get away.
It's a really good guess. I mean, odds are.
And the third, the main character's primary motivation involves his child. I think that one might be the close.
I would give you full credit for that one, but we're to let our guest be the judge. DW, how do you score Bill's 3 things? Without spoilers yet, because we're not there yet.
I'll say 1 of 3 for sure.
Yeah, which I think is hats off to you because I didn't do well, because that means you surprised me, I would say. So I think that's a tip of the cap to you.
Well, thank you. Are you usually around 1 out of 3? Because if so, then it's not a tip of the hat to me. It's a dunk on the head to you.
I usually massage one of them. Stacie usually gives me 1 point, I think, just out of pity. But yeah, it's usually like a half a point.
It doesn't feel like a tip of the cap to me. It just feels like you didn't do well.
I just suck at guessing. I'll say it.
No.
No, that's super fun.
I'm going to deliver some content warnings for the benefit of our listeners. We like everyone to enjoy horror safely and accessibly. This movie depicts incarcerated characters, a character locked inside of a house, alcohol abuse, pregnancy, as well as pregnancy-related and postpartum mental health struggles, a child death, which is not funny. I'm not laughing at that. It happens off screen, but we do see the corpse, and it is graphic. There are many frightening and intense scenes, and while there are just a couple of scenes involving violence and gore, they are intense. As always, you might want to check doesthedogdie.com if you're worried about any specific triggers I did not cover, but be assured that in this movie, the dog doesn't die. DW, are you willing today here with us to take the No Dogs Will Die in My Movies Ever pledge, which is something I just made up, and may or may not be a joke depending on how you respond?
All right, so
oh boy,
yeah, it's a longer answer than you're gonna want. So it's funny that there's a website called Does the Dog Die, because there's like a screenwriting rule which is don't kill the dog. So that's like a pretty famous screenwriting one, and like all rules are meant to be broken. And
that one, right?
It really depends. Have you guys seen The Conjuring, the first Conjuring movie?
Yes.
Yes.
How do we feel about the disappearance of the dog?
I think that we see the corpse of the dog, if I
Do we
remember
see the
correctly,
corpse of the
unless
dog?
my brain might have invented it, but I believe that in the final version, maybe not the original script.
You're probably right. I think I remember like the dog disappeared, and I was like, okay.
I say no corpse, no problem, if you ask me. But
Of course, no problem.
That's how I live my life.
I don't know. I still feel bad about missing dogs, but that's just me. And you know what? I feel like The more divided this country gets, the more divided we are in horror on this issue for
Ooh.
some reason. And it's one of the reasons I had to quit talking about horror on Reddit.
I will say this: that are you guys fans of the games Last of Us?
I'm familiar with it, not haven't gotten into it at all, but
Same, and there's a show, right?
The show's pretty good. I'm not gonna say anything then, but the show's pretty good. There's no dog stuff that I'm aware of in the first show, but my friend told I'm not gonna get into it because it is a spoiler thing, but it was a really interesting talk we had about this same concept, and you know,
okay.
I think there are reasons to kill the dog. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever like watched a movie like Marley and Me. You know,
Uh-huh.
how close is that to killing the dog?
True.
And
I avoid those too.
God, those movies break me.
I can't.
I've read so few books in my life because it's just not something I'm good at. But like I remember reading a couple like of these like shorter novels about people who love their dogs and how the dog saved their and almost like a Marley and Me esque book, and
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
something I would buy for a plane ride or something. And woof, what a choice.
Like the red fern grows? Okay.
Sort of sad along those lines. Like, yeah, it's just heartbreaking type. So will I take the pledge not to kill the dog in my movie? No, I won't take that pledge.
Fair enough.
It would never be for shock value.
You know what? I think we've reached a good compromise on this issue. Moving on. Bill, do you have any questions for DW before we do our spoiler demarcating intermission?
Where do you think the horror genre is headed in general? What kind of trends have you noticed? What do you think is going to be popping in the next 5 years, or kind of, based on where we're coming from in the last 5, let's say?
I am so confused about this. As a writer and person who wants to make more things, it's so difficult.
Yeah,
There's that producer Rick Rubin who says stuff like, "Just make what you want to make, and the right people will come."
sure.
And as you
Hmm.
know, as for the whole market of horror, it's hard to say. You get people who are like anti A24, and then you get people who are anti slasher. And
Right.
I grew up in this age of like, okay, yeah, you guys might call me weird for I was always into like emo and hardcore music when I was younger, and like then all of a sudden there was like a million subgenres, and then
Sure.
you know for every subgenre there was a big band, and you were splitting up the amount of people who would listen to anything. And and I talked about this before, the democratization or whatever the correct way to say that is, voting with our dollars. And
Hmm.
I think what we're gonna have is more indie movies, and more
Yes.
indie movies being successful and seeing a drop in, you'll still have these big $80 million tentpole movies, but you'll start seeing more of like the 2 to 5 to $10 million movies for a smaller group of people to get behind and love, versus one $50 million movie. I don't know what the budget
Right.
for Nosferatu is, but obviously that's a standout because that was.
About
Sure.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
It was about $1
I'm
billion.
sure it's massive.
But that guy, when he's got a trajectory of building his fan base and doing his own vision, and people love that. But I think overall we're going to see an outpouring of more indie, and I think that's probably true of most genres.
Hmm.
But that's what I think. It's going to be less humongous horrors and more small horrors, and for better or worse, because as we saw after COVID, even this movie is like they're so contained. Writers are like,
Right.
okay,
Um,
we have to write for what we can make. And as much as I want to write a space opera, it's not called Star Wars. It's called War Stars. As much as I want to write War Stars, I'll never. I don't know if that'll ever happen.
you could do it with stop motion.
Yeah, but I'd have to learn how
Just
to
an
use.
idea.
I'd have to learn how to do stop motion.
I think along the same lines, and I liken it to the music industry in that the barrier to entry is so incredibly low, and it gets lower and lower, which is a great thing because more people can make art.
Yeah,
But the problem is the more that's out there, the harder it is to find those gems, like anything. If everyone can go
I
record
know in the first
albums,
5 minutes if
but
it's a gem or not.
yeah, it's just, but it's
Just
hard to even
saying.
find them initially though. Like there's a YouTube movie I
Good
saw
point.
called Milk and Cereal.
Oh, how was that?
really freaking good, and it cost him like $500 or something, and it's a well put together movie. Like, it's a good feature film, and they come from comedy, like we were talking about earlier. Most
Have
of
you
their
watched
stuff
any
is,
of their comedy
oh
stuff?
yeah, absolutely.
They're great.
It's like absurdist, like almost like what's the Tim Robinson? I
Oh, I
think you
think
should
you should
leave.
leave. One of my
It's that
favorites.
kind of comedy where it's very awkward
Oh.
and very like. But yeah, I think that's the trend it's going to be. It's going to be like these small films up against these gigantic films, and hopefully playing on the same, field, which is ideally what you want, right? You want them getting the similar exposure, getting picked up and put next to these gigantic flagpole,
Yeah,
or tentpole movies.
I'd love to see Milk and Cereal in 4DX.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I love those guys. Their Instagram videos are just so clever and funny.
Oh, I go
I'm a
down
big
rabbit
fan.
holes with those, and they're so quick. Like, most of them are just quick skits, and they're just like, they're perfect. They're so
They're-
clever.
They're
okay, I gotta go
masterful.
watch some more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're masterful.
really good.
But I would never have found that movie if it weren't for you, Bill. So I see what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just a YouTube movie. They're not, they didn't release it outside of YouTube. It's just go watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Freaking, it's awesome. Do you have anything else, Stacie?
I sure do. DW, your first bio that I ever saw is literally making sad horror movies, which yes, please make more. But you do really lean into trauma and in I Will Never Leave You Alone, especially grief and trauma, which have both trended big in horror recently. Like, what do you think is responsible for this trend, and why are we seeking these stories out on screen? Please psychoanalyze me.
Well, I'm not going to psychoanalyze you. I mean, and as long as you promise,
Decay.
as long as you promise not to psychoanalyze me for making the movie,
Swear.
that's one of the hardest things about putting that out there. Because, like, Quentin Tarantino has this quote, something along the lines of, "If you're not making stuff that people around you are embarrassed of when they watch, you're not necessarily doing enough." And I don't necessarily live by that, but he's made a couple movies that people liked, from what I understand.
Just a couple, yeah.
Some people.
Yeah, some people. So I think mental health is becoming more important to a lot of people, and I think it's I mean, even when I was like in my younger 20s, I was very much I gotta wake up, I gotta go to work. I hate that bootstrap mentality because there's such an undercurrent of terribleness to a phrase like that. But that's, there was this mentality of like, you gotta be strong, you gotta be tough, you gotta work, you gotta do this.
And we can't talk about it.
And we can't talk about
Right.
it. God forbid if I went to work and told someone I'm not feeling well today, they're like, "Oh no, do you have a fever?" It's like, "No, I'm just feeling a little hopeless."
Yeah, like mental health days, right? That wasn't even a thing back
Yeah.
then,
But it's kind of coming around, and there's a balance to all this stuff. And I think, because you still can't go to work and really do that. Because if you go to work and take a mental health day, there's still a lot of judgment and stigma,
Sure.
because there are people who are they have their minds trained by capitalism. That's like, work more, get paid less, work harder, do more, and I hate that.
Right.
I'm not going to get into my political ideology stuff here, but I do think that
You're not. Dang it.
yeah, I do think that people shouldn't be hard on people for needing to take time off, whether
Right.
that's because they don't feel well, or whether they're having a mental health day, or whether, they're on maternity leave. We should normalize those things rather than
For sure.
punish people because we're not taking that time off.
100%. We should also remember, like, it really depends on your geography, even within the US. Like, I work for a California company. They're very, very good about that stuff. Some people don't even have sick days,
Yeah.
depending on where they live.
Yep.
Some people are living the bootstrap lifestyle, whether they want to or not,
Yeah. So I would say, just to wrap that up, is trauma is becoming a much more relevant thing to us as a community, whether it's just in our homes on our couches watching movies, or whether it's something we're talking about with friends or a therapist. And I think, gosh, if you asked me to say a quote about movies, I never would, but like something my dad used to say to me, because he would take me to the movies every weekend, and he was a big reader. He would say, I forget who made the quote, but he would say, "We read to know we're not alone." And, because I hated reading, and he would say, "That's why we read. We read to know we're not alone." And I
Oh,
think that about movies too. And I think we
I
watch
do
to
too.
see that we're not alone. We read to know we're not alone. We watch movies to see we're not alone. And that's why I think there's a lot of these going on. And I remember watching Babadook years ago and thinking like we can talk about grief or we can't talk about grief. I don't want to spoil the ending if you haven't seen it, but the ending is really just about knowing you have this grief and keeping it healthy and tucking it away. And I think if they made that movie today, that ending might be different. That ending would still be there, but it might not be tucking it in the basement. It might be putting it in its own bedroom.
That's really interesting.
So I think trauma has a place to stay here. Will it always be here? Well, probably not. We'll probably all heal and we'll be happy. So
Right.
when that happens, there'll be
So
no more. Yeah,
optimistic.
there'll be no more
Yeah.
trauma movies.
So I've heard people say, like, can we just have regular old monsters and slashers? Like, does everything have to be trauma now? I mean, we're not friends with those people on this show, but they do exist. Like, what would you say to that?
It's like I was saying about music before. There's so many different subgenres, and I mean, I think the difference between a slasher and these trauma horrors is, it's the difference of hardcore music where people want to go mosh versus like shoegaze where people want
Right.
to sit on the couch
Oh,
alone and like feel it. They're just different. They're different rides the same theme park. And you don't have to like both. You probably just should accept that some people like one. And
Yeah.
for me, that's fair enough because there's going to be crossover, right? There's a lot of slasher heads who like Hereditary. There's
Sure.
a lot of shoegaze people who probably love Scream.
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
It's not the genre necessarily that I think people don't necessarily vibe with. It might just be personal preference, what people are ready to watch when they're ready to watch it. And this movie, um, there's one guy who posted about it, said it was like the most disturbing movie he's seen in 2024, and half of the people are like, "This movie sucks. It's not half as good as Terrifier," and I'm like, it's not my
Oh,
place.
It's a
God.
weird
Well,
comparison.
Yeah, they're like very different movies. That's like,
Yeah.
it's apples to oranges, and I
Right.
totally get why people wouldn't like a trauma movie versus some people who like these trauma movies who wouldn't like Terrifier.
Variety's the spice of life. Come on, it's like
Yeah.
that's the beauty of it. You can dip into every little pool if you want to.
So when people say they don't like mine because it's this, it's not this, it's like, well, of course it's not that. But yeah, it doesn't bother me too much.
did it take a while before it didn't bother you? Or were you pretty tough from the beginning?
Oh, I was lying. It bothers me a lot.
Oh,
Emotionally, it bothers me. Not a lot, but I'd like everyone to like my stuff and be happy, and I'd like everyone to like everything, and be really supportive all of the time, and be positive and practice radical positivity, but be
Yeah.
honest about things. Like I'm not a big online poster of like feelings and stuff, but one person on that thread was like, "Yeah, this movie, it sucks," whatever she said. And then the guy was like, "But what about this scene?" And we'll just say microwave. And she goes,
Yep.
"Oh yeah, I forgot about that. This movie is disturbing." And that to me was one of the coolest things I've seen on the internet, which was
Yeah.
nice.
like someone saying something, someone having an opposing view, and then someone with that opposing view was like, "Hey," with kindness was like, "But hey, what about this part of it?" And then that person was, human enough to say, "I was wrong. You're right." I was just like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Whether it was about my movie, whether it's about something else in life, it's just I feel like people don't necessarily want to meet in the middle a lot anymore.
No.
Maybe
Those
never. I don't know.
conversations are all too rare. It's at
Hard to
least that.
even find the middle.
It
It's
is.
like we're all coming at it from different dimensions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether right or wrong, super far in one way, it's just, I thought that was cool when two people
Yeah.
who were arguing came to an agreeable place. And I commented, I was like, I don't know if they knew it was my movie or anything. I was just like, hey, this is one of the coolest things I've seen. It's just two people being
That's
nice to each
awesome.
other on the internet.
Encourage it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
Dark Fact.
I could tell you something that happened to me. I mean, it's not a secret. We were making the movie. The movie has these like wooden panels over the windows.
Hmm.
We have no money to make anything, so we got these, forklift pallet boards. If you're familiar with those, they're like kind of cross hatchboard
Sure.
boards.
Yeah.
And we're taking them apart to put them on the windows. And I pull, they're harder to think than I thought to pull apart.
Yeah.
So we're breaking them down, and they have two heavy nails that come out of both ends. And I don't know if you know where this is going yet.
Oh, I have a feeling.
Pulled it out. We kept pulling out, and one of my producers goes, "We should really put those to the side because you could fall, and anyone could fall and hurt themselves." I said to him this. I was like, "Who falls? Who falls? We're grown up. We're grown
Oh
ups. Who
boy.
falls?"
Uh-huh.
You invited this.
Yeah, you
Oh
did.
my!
By those words, you summoned it.
I willed it into
Whatever it is.
being, and then.
Yep.
By the way, I love wearing flip flops, and that was like, and now you know where it's going.
Uh-huh.
And I stepped on that board. I fell, and I like caught myself. I stepped on that board, and I remember
Oh.
like knowing exactly what happened. Didn't hurt. It was just so fast and so much pressure down.
Sure.
I remember, and mind you, we shot the movie in 9 days, and this was the day off between the before starting days 4 through 9. So it's the rest of the movie. I remember it happened, and I was like, oh no. And I lifted my foot up, and in my memory, which, it's always changing your memories, I heard the jello spoon come out,
Oh
and
God.
two nails had gone
Oh,
into
two
my
nails.
two nails.
Oof.
And yeah, I remember sitting on the ground thinking like, oh great, I ruined the movie. This is done. And then, I went to the doctor. She numbed my foot. She pulled a little piece of the nail that was in there out. And she was
Oh.
from Philly too, which was the best. She's like,
Nice.
all right, dude, you can either go to the hospital, get an x-ray, figure that out. And she's like, or I can do it right now. I was like, numb me up, let's do it. And then, I had to drive back to set. And the next day I was working, and a producer was like, why don't you sit down? And I was like, because there's no chair. That next day, I mean, I remember having to wear two socks, and it bled through both of them despite the
Oh.
bandage.
Oh no.
And it took like 3 days before that stopped happening. Oh, the doctor was like, you can't walk on this. And I was like, yeah, I kind of
Watch
do.
me.
Yeah. And yeah, it eventually stopped bleeding so much. And I was having trouble sleeping because I couldn't stop thinking about my foot having two holes. And it was just really psychologically weird for me.
Been psychologically weird for me during this telling of the
Sorry, I
story.
should have let you guys
Yeah,
know.
it's okay.
No, that's the
Oh,
whole
we know
purpose of
what
dark
we're,
facts. So
we know what we're up against.
But yeah, that's the dark fact.
Perfect. Well, now is when we do intermission music so that people know spoilers are coming.
welcome back to the show. We are now going to get into our spoilerific plot discussion of I Will Never Leave You Alone from 2023. Stacie, did you have something to start with?
Yeah, just to remind everybody, we have special guest writer director of this movie, DW Medoff, on the call. Hello again.
Hello.
So this movie opens and it's on Richard's last day serving a 6-year prison sentence. Don't think we didn't notice the number 6 is very significant. And the imprisonment continues to be a theme throughout the movie in literal and figurative ways, beginning with this great irony of Richard moving directly from prison into the house where he's locked inside. And of course, by the end, he's in an eternal spiritual prison. Poor Richard.
Yeah, poor Richard.
Did you talk at all about what inspired this arc of confinement and what this theme means to you?
It's hard to necessarily say about why prison. I just think a lot of problems that we have with ourselves, at least for me, are things we can't get out of. And the fact that we could take someone who's in a physical prison, an emotional prison, a spiritual prison, and then put them in a second physical prison
Right.
and then have all new circumstances for the spiritual and emotional prison that they're in it was really interesting to play with while writing it and thinking about it. I mean, prison's horrible. I've watched some of these videos of these guys, and I never would want to be in prison. I don't think I would survive a thing like
Yeah.
that. And I think Richard's character is a lot of that. He's a normal. Through the story, you learn he's a pretty normal dude.
Yes.
With a 9 to 5, and he, through what happens to him, goes into prison, and he's fundamentally always going to be changed from a lot of things, and that's why I say
Right.
physical, emotional, spiritual prisons. How do you escape from prison? We don't hear a lot of people escaping from prison, and when they do,
Right.
they either end up dead or they end up going back with an extended sentence.
Yeah. Not a good outcome, generally speaking. It's such a unique setup because it answers the question right away. What's at stake for him? Why does he need to stay in this house that he could very easily just walk out of? He's going to break his parole and go back to prison and probably stay even longer. So it's kind of the whole thing with, like, nowadays you have to explain, well, where are the cell phones in this movie, right? It's that whole thing you have to address in the first act of a movie. Well, why can't they just get their cell phone out? Same thing here. Why can't he just leave the house? And this is a very creative way I think you came up with to make the stakes higher, and in a way that I've never seen before, because I'm like, this is a strange way to start a film, but very unique.
I will say this. You made a comment that is just so true, which is, how do we get rid of the cell phones?
Yeah. And it's actually kind of like a tropey annoying thing now, because it has to happen. Yeah. And it's this dumb thing, like in Halloween 2018, one of the characters flippantly throws the girl's phone into a punch bowl at a dance. And it's just like such an obvious thing why that had to happen, Yeah. And when you look for it, it happens in every single film. Like in You're Next, there's a cell phone jammer on top of the house. And that's the reason no one can make a call. Or you're out in the middle of nowhere. There has to be some reason why they can't use a cell phone.
And I love that so much, because that is like the ultimate questions. Like, because you could just call 911. You don't even need to have cell phone service. There's a satellite thing that does it.
Yes.
For, so it's like, how do you get rid of the cell phones?
Well, and it's funny too, because then you get if you haven't noticed, there's a trend now where there's a lot of horror movies taking place in like the 70s, 80s, like Stranger Things, like stuff like that. And well, that takes care of the problem right there. So you don't even have to explain it away if you just, place the movie 30, 40 years ago, whatever. So
a friend of mine just did that with her novel. She moved it from present time to the 90s to solve that problem.
You guys watch a lot more than I do. Are there any good current movies that incorporate cell phones as part of like the story? Like Talk to Me did a pretty good job of keeping phones in the movie. I mean, they didn't really explore the social media posts they made, but I didn't care about that. But
the first one that comes to mind for me is Bodies, 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 which it's not my favorite movie, but it's clever.
I did like it.
The way I didn't dislike it, but the way they use cell phones in that movie, it's actually super integral to the plot of the movie. And it's a bunch of Gen Z, it's Gen Zers, I guess, would be.
Most of them, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a world I don't fully understand, but but yeah, that's when I would say it's definitely uses cell phones to
I'll check it out.
A good end.
There's one that was like streaming only that was about a child that I want to say a nonverbal child who was like tricked into playing a cell phone game, and it was like, I won't spoil the movie that I can't remember how it ended, but it was like some kind of malevolent entity that was working through the phone. And then there's One Missed Call. It's a few years old though.
So back in the plot here, so the realtor has pulled up to the house with Robert. She's kind of explaining everything to him. And I wanted to ask about this house because, and I think part of the answer may just be budget, kind of the more we talk about it. But I think with a lot of haunted house movies, people go big. They go lavish. They get these big Victorian houses that are naturally creepy. Those don't do it for me at all. Like for me, this kind of like, I would say kind of like a modest house, more or less. The one that you have in this movie, it looks lived in, which is great. It kind of reminded me of like going to an Airbnb. There's just a feel about that where like things some things are kind of old, some things are kind of new, like the microwave's brand new, but like the rest
Maybe
of
a
it's old.
3-star Airbnb. Like, I don't know. Gotta knock off stars for, like, the entity.
Right. But there's always that closet that the owner is the only one that has the key
It's
for,
locked.
and you're always like, what's in that closet? And that's absolutely what spoke to me about this movie. Kind of similar to like Barbarian, same idea. You're going into this
Mhm.
like modest neighborhood house that seems kind of, unassuming.
But it's somebody else's house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's the horror coming from out of that. So can you speak about that house a little bit? How did you find it?
Yeah.
Were you looking at others?
So the house I really wanted to shoot in was, I won't say the name, but it's got like the word estate in it, and it's not an estate. It is just one of these modest houses from like the 1930s, and it's like
Sure.
it's definitely built an addition on from the 30s. So half of it's brick, half of it's this like I don't know, and it's painted red on one of the side. It's creepy. It's surrounded by trees. I really wanted to shoot there, and we've shot short films there. And I will say we do this thing called a dummy check at the end of the night, which is last person does one sweep and turns off the lights. It was not fun doing a dummy check in that house.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
There was a vibe. This might offend a lot of people, and I'm sorry if it does. I don't believe in ghosts.
I don't either, which is
We
why
don't either.
it takes a real solid movie to get me.
Yeah,
This is all fantasy.
Yeah, I think people can be afraid of things, and I don't want to ever say that. Like, I'm totally not trying to invalidate anyone's experience because I've had very strange experiences in my life. I just
Sure.
believe that there's some kind of optical illusion, some kind of audio illusion. Like, we're so capable of not understanding the world around us. And things happen, and like you can watch one of these like things where it's painted a certain way, and someone shows it to you, and it's like, oh, it's an optical illusion. That's great.
Right.
Could that happen on its own while being outside in the dark? Absolutely. So the place had a vibe. Long story short, I mean, there's vibe, there's history.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to shoot there real bad, but there was a bunch of traveling nurses living there at the time,
Oh,
and
okay.
even they were like, "Yeah, it's a good ghost. We're gonna stay." So they just kept extending their
Aw.
stay, and yeah, they liked the ghost. I mean, I don't know what the presence was. It did not like us. If there is one,
Right.
it didn't like us.
Oh, wow.
It liked them. They were comfortable in there. We were like, this place says bad vibes. So I wanted to film there. I still want to do like one of these ghost adventures type movie,
Oh, cool.
like I just want to like sit in there and just have a camera with me and two people and see what happens. In Georgia's got a big film scene, and there's a government website where people can put their houses up. And I spent a bunch of time looking through all the houses, emailing people. And this place was called Coleman Oaks. They had just bought the
Hmm.
house, and just emptied it, which was a shame because then we had to refill it with
Ooh.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Great production
Oh,
designer
bummer.
Jacob Palmer. He did a great job of like renting stuff, buying stuff, and putting it in the house to make it look creepy and lived in. It's funny you
Yeah.
mentioned the microwave because that was like a pain point for us. We were like, God, I wish I could get an old microwave to put in there. And it was just like, if we wanted to, it wouldn't fit right. And
Sure.
so, yeah, the microwave was definitely a pain point.
To me, that just makes it even
I
weirder because
bought it.
you don't know
Yeah.
who owned this place before, how many owners there were, what they did. There's always that mystery to the house. So
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know.
So
Those
Very
little,
realistic.
that's pretty
yeah.
much, that's how we found it. Just a lot of research through the Georgia film website. I forget what it's called, but yeah.
So the realtor was not based on a real person that took you around to see houses.
Um,
She
I
was
had
great, by the
I
way.
oh she was yeah. So all these people are like friends in that little like
Yeah.
Atlanta community I was talking about, and that character is not a bad person. It's not based on a bad person. It's based on all of these realtors I know who are super happy, super upbeat, and it's
Mm.
not a bad thing in life, but bringing that to like this deceptive, most realtors are gonna, at least my realtor was like, don't buy XYZ house because you're not gonna want to fix this. The cost is
True.
50,000 less than the house next door because blah and blah. And you're not the type to fix things. And I was like, you're great. That's true.
You get me.
Yeah. And so take that person who's really lively and fun and good at making you feel good and turn that into a villain, and that's that character.
So kind of get back to the plot. So she's standing in front of the house. She's explaining everything to him. So then Robert gets distracted. He starts hearing, some noises kind of in the barn area. Ends up at
Richard?
the, huh?
I wasn't gonna say it.
Did you mean Richard?
Oh my
Oh.
God. What did I say?
Robert?
Oh, why
He's
did I
done it.
put
He's done
Robert?
it twice, guys. I'm out of here.
Oh my gosh. Richard. I have
I
Robert in my
fucked it up,
notes for some
Bill.
reason. Oh, I did it. Sorry. Richard hears a noise in the barn, and he goes out and he actually goes to the adjacent forest, and next to a tree he sees kind of a shovel, and then he kind of digs down and grabs a kind of a doll that's been burnt. And we get our first kind of maybe jump scare. I don't know if I even call it a jump scare. We get the hands coming out, which would scare
I
the
think
crap
it's a
out of
jump
me.
Scare. Jump scare for me.
I just want to say Richard is like unshakable. I feel like his character in this movie, at least after watching Deadstream, which we watched last time, where he's just like screaming at every
oh God,
little
he's a big
noise.
baby. It's hilarious.
Richard just is like, he's a brave dude, I gotta say, throughout most of this movie. And maybe it's just because of what he's already lived through. Like, how much worse could it get?
Right.
Yeah.
He's had to go through prison without being able to talk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the realtor, of course, comes by and tells him that that's the witching tree. They walk away. Robert takes the doll with him.
The witching tree, like it's a totally normal thing.
And that's, I love that. Oh, that's the witching tree. There's a lot of that matter of fact
mind
stuff,
the
which I think
witching
is
tree.
great. Yeah, absolutely.
The realtor. He'll tell you.
And then that night he lights a candle. And this is where we get the 6 candles, which I thought was a very smart device to like keep the audience abreast of where we were in it. Because like singular location movies, at least for me, they get disorienting after a while, and it's hard when you can't tell day, nights, which day are we on? So him lighting a candle every day, I thought was a really smart way of just kind of subtly keeping track, at least for me as a viewer.
Yeah. That was kind of one of the goals of it. So I appreciate you. I appreciate that it worked a bit.
Yes, it definitely did. I'm a dummy when it comes to that stuff. So I need all the guidance I can get.
Can I take us back to
Sure.
it's the day that Richard's getting out and he has a counselor in the prison. The counselor gives him the gift of the crucifix and says,
Remember, where there's faith, there's hope.
that feels almost like the thesis statement of the movie, I think, at the time. Then you spend the rest of the movie turning that on its head. So you got the realtor who tells him, you'll be fine. If you don't believe in any of the supernatural stuff, you got nothing to worry about. So that's like kind of like the corollary. By the end, my interpretation anyway, Richard believes he's being reunited with his wife and child. So it's really his like delusional belief, so to speak, that is giving him hope. While in reality, I think he's haunting the house alongside the Crone, which I'm pretty sure is not what the counselor in prison had in mind. So a couple questions. Number 1, would I get an A on that English paper? Number 2, could you describe the process of writing a story like that so that it has like a strong artery of poetic irony pumping through it the whole way, just from a craft point of view?
Yeah. I mean, are you guys familiar with Save the Cat?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I'm a big Save the Cat person. Again, as a guiding point, make your own rules as you go. But for me, it's a guiding point. And you talked about where there's faith, there's hope, and that's my theme stated for the movie. Like everything,
Knew it.
yeah, everything should kind of in some way reflect that. And it doesn't have to be as strict as faith or hopefulness, but I think about it as a lot of like asking for help is also, you got to be able to ask for help. And for a person without a voice, what does that mean? So we have those two thoughts. And then, yeah, you meet the realtor who has his worst interest in mind. And he's
Right.
not able to he is probably too tough now for his own good, where he's learned to not speak through prison. And he's probably been beaten up. And I don't know if it comes across that clear. He's got that scar across his neck,
Sure.
and that he's, where there's faith, there's hope, never really registers for him. He gets the cross and it's meaningless.
Right.
It's just when I'm $5,000. He's like, okay, I get out of prison. I'll find a little bit of money. I'll figure this out. Haunted house can't be worse than jail. Can't be
Right.
worse than prison. $5,000 can't be worse than zero. I'm already haunted by so many things. Let's just go. So yeah, hopeless. He does have hope to maybe start something when he gets out, but there's no faith, and the movie is always trying to take more, whatever little faith, whatever little hope he has, you know, again, writing that on the top of a page while I'm writing, it's just making sure that's always in play.
I like that.
Do you think of Save the Cat before you get the story onto the page, or do you think of how your story fits in the Save the Cat, just another craft quest?
The hardest part about writing is typing the first word. You know, I remember someone called it the defeating the beast of the blank page. And the thought of, do I do Save the Cat? Do I do this? I think writing takes place a lot of times without a computer and without a pen or paper. You can be TMI, but like a lot of the times it's me in a shower just banging my head against the wall, waiting for, and I was called waiting for that lightning bolt to strike.
Right.
It's driving in the car, zoned out, not in an unsafe way, but like, you know, you get in that zone of driving and then all of a sudden, boom. Or I listen to the same song over and over and over when I write, and it's like some channel has been tapped, whatever that is,
Interesting.
and it just kind of happens sometimes. So yeah, you take those ideas and don't worry about Save the Cat. You find these like cool moments in a story that you know you want to show. Like as a director, it's like as the things I want an audience to see, and eventually they kind of piece together. You explore character moments before and after, and eventually it's like, okay, now I've got to start figuring out, yeah, I guess it is piecing them into Save the Cat, and then how that story unfolds throughout those, because you probably only have a couple pieces in there. And like this one, I knew what my opening shot was and what my closing shot was, like the actual physical image I wanted you to see in the beginning and the one in the end. And I don't like telling people this, but did you guys see that they're like basically the same shot?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Mhm.
Bookends.
yeah, bookend.
Perfect bookends.
So
Yeah.
whenever I can do that, I like to do that, and it's finding everything in between. But yeah, it's a combination of just figuring things out and then putting them into a place, because some rules work really well and some are not applicable for whatever story you're going to tell.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'd say there's a combo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we leave behind the realtor and all that,
You love the realtor.
Kimberly Maxwell, what a great
Like,
actor.
just
Kimberly Maxwell.
love to hate her, which means she did a good job.
There you go.
So,
Highest praise.
Richard's actual parole opportunity is sponsored by a religious organization, and it pretty much delivers him to the doorstep of hell. And then he's really trapped by the fact that if he decides to piece out of the Hangsa ritual at any time, he goes back to prison. This feels like sharp commentary. Would you like to make commentary on the commentary?
Well, it's interesting to me that you said it's a religious organization when I didn't think anything of the organization itself.
Well, that's 1 point off my score.
No,
Bill.
I'm not going to take any. I didn't say what it is or it isn't, because I'm a big believer in separation of church and state, and I think if this guy is going to be, hit you up with a little faith, I don't know if that's, that rang true for you as with an authority Christian figure. So, I mean, I think that's really interesting that that's how you took it. Now, if we want to talk more about separation of church and state, maybe we'll find a podcast about politics to spend 3 hours on.
Sure. Yeah.
But I have a feeling my commentary on your commentary of the commentary would be probably pretty similar.
Fair enough.
I think faith in the right doses is really a strong thing for people who need that kind of part of their life. I think too much of it can be a little bit frightening, and I think with everything in life there should be a balance of things that fit your life to make your life better and never make anyone else's worse.
I think in a lot of jurisdictions they still offer like only one like Alcoholics Anonymous option for people with substance convictions, and it does feel to me like they're being forced into some kind of faith or other.
Yeah, I mean, you have to surrender yourself to, quote, a higher power, and
right.
I don't want to speak too much on experiences of people close to me in those communities in
Sure.
recovery, but not all of them are Christian, and they still find value in saying those things. And I have friends who are Christian in those things who don't necessarily find value in those words because of it.
Interesting.
So I think it's for certain people, especially the ones that I attract in my life, who we are like-minded people. I think find a strength. I shouldn't speak for them, but there's a strength in combating a disease like that. That maybe it's really helpful to have someone on your side. Whatever you think
Sure.
about it. That's why I say there's a balance in life, and as long as we're not hurting people, even ourselves, it's whatever you
Absolutely.
need.
So, kind of jumping back in, we start at this point in the film. He's getting acclimated to the house. Meanwhile, we start to get some of his flashbacks, and we get one where him and his wife are super happy. He's talking, which is just like the craziest thing because we're used to him for the first 15, 20 minutes. So it's weird to
Right?
hear his voice right out of the gate, and they're happy. They're having a great time. That slowly, or shouldn't say slowly, quickly devolves, unfortunately. Then we get I think we get the photo shoot next where she's pregnant. There's just kind of a little bit of weirdness here. And then we get them bickering in the car. We find out that, he's buying liquor again. She's like, you just bought this the other day. We can't communicate. There's a lot of communication. It's kind of, some of it's just normal fights. And that's what I like about it. You captured the mundanity, whatever that word is, of
Sure.
couples, right? It's all comes down to communication. And if you can't communicate, you're going to have problems. Even some of these arguments in the film, they hit home with me, it's just, they're very relatable, which I appreciated.
I find it so relatable in the car when she has suggested perhaps he should not be buying so much alcohol, which of course is, he feels defensive about. And then she's like, I'm not mad. I just want to be able to talk about things.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, says everyone in every relationship ever. And then he's like, he responds in anger though. And he's like, fine, let's talk about it, as if you can talk about it after that. And, oh my God, then he's the one that ends up not being able to talk about anything ever again.
Right.
It's just very poignant.
God, I wish I was smart enough to know that when I was writing it.
Just call me up next time.
There you go.
I'm easy to find.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's, I don't like talking about my personal life too much with regard to
Sure.
this stuff. But yeah, I mean, fighting is such a normal part of everybody's life, and
Yes.
the truth of it is like I'm on a weight loss journey right now. I have been for the past year or so. And I was a big binge eater. And,
Mhm.
there was a lot of times where it's like, do you really need to be buying that? And, I would get defensive about stuff. And so, yeah, for health reasons, I lost a bunch of weight over the past year or so. Comes back,
Congrats.
goes
That's
back.
awesome.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thanks. It's been good for me health wise. I was definitely getting high numbers on things and worrying about, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I think there was a period of time where I was, I know it's not the same as drinking or drugs, but, hiding chicken wings and cookies and this stuff. And,
Sure.
people who loved me were caring about me and were mad at me for doing stuff like that. So I think that's where a lot of that kind of mundane conversations come from. It's just, you can still talk to someone who's drinking or binge eating or doing
Right.
these things and still say like, what's wrong? And then they'll snap and it's like, yeah, fucking say whatever you want. I'm here. Let's talk. And it's like, well, that conversation's over.
Exactly.
So
And I think especially what struck home to me, I have a 3.5-year-old, and when you bring a child in, it just exacerbates any existing, squabbles that you have with your partner. I've noticed that firsthand. It just ramps everything up, and it's you get through it.
Pregnancy.
Yeah.
And I think like perhaps when he first starts ignoring things that are outside normal limits is when she's having a lot of psychological distress with the pregnancy. And probably like in his mind, this is a normal part of life,
Right.
everything's fine. It's gonna be all fine. And or he's descending into his like addiction himself.
Right.
It's like a perfect storm.
I just love listening to you guys talk about it.
Oh, you're so kind.
I mean, the flashbacks were some of my favorite parts, honestly. I just think it's so well put together, and I love the progression of them. Back in kind of like our present time again, while he's going through these flashbacks, he starts getting curious about the door, of course, and he finds a key, and he tries to, the closet door, the mysterious closet door, and, he tries to open it. The key pops out like you see in the movies all the time. And then we finally get the door. It finally opens, and we get one of the coolest shots in the movie. I think Stacie will probably agree with me on this. And, there's a bunch of like tarps kind of hanging down in front of the door, so you can't quite see him, but he reaches his hand in, of course, looking for a light switch. And of course, we see the hand of the witch start to move its direction, which super tense. I love the way that's shot. I don't think I've seen a shot like that in another movie. Super effective. So tip of the cap to you.
Thank you.
Love that scene. That must have been one where you were excited to shoot, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, there were some space issues, and like it wasn't exactly how I dreamed it would look, but it was very close.
Oh, it's so good though.
I also love the little detail where he doesn't have a light, so he grabs a lamp and an extension cord, and I'm just like, that is such a innovative move there.
Yeah, that was just another funny one. We realized, like, wait, like, there's no flashlight. What are we gonna? So yeah, and then we were like arguing about like how long the extension cord would be, and I was like, who cares? Just put an extension cord.
Yeah,
it'll be
just put it on there.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately, we start seeing him swigging mouthwash, which, oh man.
Oh,
that's so sad to watch. I mean, I feel for this guy for sure.
I was like, he's fucked when I saw him doing that.
Yeah.
If you come out of prison, you can, be on the clean and sober path, but now we know that is not what is going to happen.
Yeah.
I have so many questions about this next flashback. Actually, I probably just have one, like what the hell's going on, but
try to limit it to one.
Yes. So this is a flashback to when Richard and his wife are getting their picture taken, and then he looks down and the hammer's in his hand, and then I think it disappears again, and then he looks up and the photographer's head is missing. What was this? I mean, it was super effective. I just don't know.
I have a theory.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your theory.
Let me tell you about your movie,
DW. No, please do. Please do.
So I think the Crone is corrupting his memories because of the haunting. And so as he's looking back, he sees the hammer, which is an element that sort of comes out of his future, I think. And then the photographer has no head. And that's just really scary. So I don't know where, but I think it's the Crone. The Crone is doing it.
Yes, that's what I think.
Oh, cool.
Too.
Give me that point back on my chart.
Yeah, there you go.
I think what I wanted out of that moment with the hammer, because I think correct me, I forget timeline wise, but I think he's already used the hammer to beat the doorknob.
Oh, you might be right. Yeah,
I think
right.
but also it is this future weapon that like she's like, this is going to be important for you later.
Right.
And yeah, it's like this corrupted memory, and like she doesn't care about the photographer in this memory, so she just like go away.
Right.
So it's like he doesn't even matter. Originally, I wanted the scene to be their wedding, and then as they walk down the aisle, they do all this stuff, and then it would just be a sea of empty clothing. That's what I originally wanted, and it was just
amazing.
Yeah, it was just one of those things I had to take out for production budget.
Yeah.
Put that scene in your back pocket, because I think you could totally
do it in another movie.
Yeah. So that one's something I'm gonna hold on to for sure.
But please don't make us sit through the entire wedding. We don't like it when movies do that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Well, that explains it, because in like the next flashback, I think he's fighting again with his wife, and she quickly turns into the witch and then turns back again. So again, it's this whole idea of corrupting the memories again. So she's starting to get in his head more and more, it sounds like, as we see more of these flashbacks.
Yeah.
So then kind of back of the house, the witch is then on the rocking chair under the plastic. My notes might be a little out of order here.
Can we talk about the rocking chair?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm not an expert on rocking chairs, sadly, but I've noticed there's the kind that just rocks a little bit, and it has just a gentle arc shape on the rocky part. And then there's those kind that are like the Victorian kind with the very curly rocker, and they rock really far back. And have you seen the Daniel Radcliffe version of Woman in Black?
No.
Because it's got the scariest rocking chair, and I was like, is that the same? Can that be the same rocking chair?
That
because
would be
I just
really
find
strange.
that kind so much scarier. So I was very happy with all the rocking chair scenes. Back to you, Bill.
Well, and actually, even before that, we have Emma who's singing to the baby in a rocking chair in the flashback.
yeah.
She's suffering some, crazy
Good
postpartum
call.
depression. And, Richard's just trying to help, but how much can you really help? He's trying to be supportive, but, at that point, they're just underwater, it sounds like, emotionally. And then, so then back at the house, the witch is on the rocking chair under the plastic, which is incredibly creepy. And then we get Mike banging on the door, kind of checking if he's okay. I love all of these scenes with Mike, just made me so happy. There's just something about his character that just jumps off the screen for me.
Until he tells the saddest story ever told.
Oh, God. Yes.
But up until then, it's a great relief to see him.
Right. Yes. Mike does tell him the legend about the house, just to give him a little bit of background on it. And they're speaking through the window, which I think is kind of cool. Communicating through the window, we'll say.
Yeah.
Which I really liked. And he even mentions that the people had found the woman, what was it? In the 1800s, an old widow lived in the house. They thought she was a witch.
1800s.
Late 1800s. They locked her in the house, sewed her mouth shut, nailed her eyes, and then hanged her, which is all become important later.
And then it took her a long ass time to die.
Yep.
So they assaulted and tortured her because they thought she caused a plague. And nowadays, people don't think she did any of that. This completely harkens back to all the witch hunts.
Yep, exactly.
Of all times.
And then Mike's advice is just be nice to her, which is some good advice.
And he also delivers the line,
everybody loves a story where the ends justify the means.
and I was like, yes, that is exactly what has happened in the witch stories throughout history.
Right.
People retcon those witchy actions in order to justify just hating women, torturing and killing them, and some men, and 2 dogs. Damn it. Makes me so mad.
There were witch dogs?
Yes, there were 2. In Salem, I think it's Salem.
I don't want to make a joke out of it, but clearly we need to get these people to take the pledge.
Yeah, right?
I'm going to resurrect them if I ever figure out how, just to make them take the pledge.
I know I'm joking, but it's a very serious thing.
It really is.
Whether we're talking about witches in the past or, different communities now that are just, history is written by winners, and winners don't necessarily take a lot into account. And yeah, I mean, people love a story where the ends justify the means, and that's not necessarily good for a society. Just smooth over the bad things they do. We do.
Right.
I've done. Mike does have one of the best pieces of advice, which is just maybe be nice to her.
Yeah.
But did that work out?
Are we ready to talk about the microwave?
Okay.
So while microwaving food, Richard has a flashback to opening his microwave and finding his child dead in there. This one completely caught me off guard, and I'm guessing that was probably your intention with it, because holy hell, that was out of left field.
I was like, wow, he went there on screen. That's bold.
Yeah.
Very bold.
If it could get worse, it kind of does. The baby was crying and she was trying to warm him, is what his wife says.
Postpartum psychosis is Dr. Stacie's diagnosis.
Oh, of course, yes. And then he tells his wife, I will never leave you alone.
He says the name of the movie.
She takes the keys, puts the car in reverse, lays down behind it, and gets rolled over. Oh my goodness, those two scenes, one scene, those 2 little events. Oh my God.
I'm not saying he's blameless, but they pinned it all on him.
Right.
But yeah, back to Bill's question.
Did you have any reservations about showing a dead baby in a microwave? I mean, I'm guessing you probably spent a little bit of time thinking about how to do that, or
it seems like something
to what extent?
The only thing I really thought of was how to make it believable. I never really considered, like you guys did some trigger warnings before this. I never really thought of trigger warnings, which is,
it's not your job.
As a storyteller, it's definitely not something I would want to do or recommend to anyone to do before making a story. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I certainly didn't mean to do that as like you got to watch this movie because this happened.
Right.
That's definitely not why I wanted that to happen. I wanted that scene to just be like the absolute low point of his life.
It's a gut punch for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that there are some stories that we really need to read or hear or see, and horror is sometimes the only genre that will allow them to be told. And I think this is one of them. Just because you couldn't put that in a regular old drama, not on screen, and it would probably be scandalous even off screen. And if you do decide to watch The Coffee Table, I think that is something I have also said about that movie.
Interesting.
It really didn't even feel like a horror movie, like much less than this one, except that it had elements that were too horrific for a drama or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny you said maybe that's what like the slasher community doesn't love, that these really are dramas.
Stories, real story.
I'm not a big fan of the phrase elevated horror that some people give to like
Sure.
A20. It's just they're just different types of storytelling. It's
Right.
one is I'm sorry to go back to that, but like yeah, I mean I just think there's different roller coasters at a theme park for either the same person to do different times or different people like different ones. Take me to Disney. I'm doing dark rides all day.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not missing the stuff at
If
Universal.
you can get through the line,
Yes.
I would recommend the VIP pass.
There you
Thank you.
go.
I will do that. So yeah, I love the drama of storytelling. Someone asked me that once. It was like, well, what greater drama is there other than life and death?
Exactly.
And having your life be presented to you that way for him at that moment, it's just like it's beyond drama. There's no drama in that moment. It is just deflation. And
Despair.
yeah, I saw like the first time I saw it in a theater was at Telluride with a group of people. And I'd never been in a theater where I've seen everyone just stop breathing.
Oh, wow.
And as cruel as this is, I was like, oh, that's cool.
Ah, I love it. I love it.
And that the same thing happened when we showed it in Atlanta with a friends and crew screening. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. And I think because it wasn't like shock value. Like I remember in the first Terrifier, he saws the woman in half vertically.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
Eh.
yeah, that's like really gruesome and shocking. And like
Yep.
everyone in the audience is like, oh God. This is intentionally a different type of moment. And as you said, it's a gut punch. And you
It
hear
is,
the
yeah.
air come out of people sometimes when I heard the air come out of people when it happened. And I remember at Telluride, 2 people walked out, and it was after that.
Oh, wow.
I don't think they walked out because the movie was too scary. I think they walked out because
Yeah.
that moment, if they had known that moment was in the movie, they probably wouldn't have seen it.
Interesting.
Yeah, some people don't want to see it, or some people do not want to have that vulnerability in public.
Yeah. At first, I was like, "Oh, cool! We did this thing where people walked out at a horror festival," and then it kind of dawned on me. I was like, "Whoa, this wasn't sawing someone in half and then being like, that's too crazy for me." This was like a very real emotional moment that happened for them. Maybe it wasn't
Yeah.
that, but like something about it was like,
Something.
we don't need this in our life, and I
Right.
totally get that.
Moving on, he he's got, I don't remember what happens quite right before this, but at some point he sees kind of like a black cloth going up the stairs, and then he ends up going to sit
Ooh.
in the rocking chair, and his eyes start rolling in his head, and we see the creature's hand brush against his face, which is now kind of covered in soot. So, I mean, things are going downhill real fast for him at this point in the movie.
It's one of those scares where the scare is not the thing that you think it's going to be. Like he's following the black veil or trail of the
Right.
dress or whatever. And then the jump scare comes out of somewhere else and makes him, runs him into the room that has the
Yes.
rocking chair. I just want to say I love those kind of scares. So if you have any advice on building the tension, building the payoff, having things that actually surprise horror fans, because we've
Which is
seen
tricky.
so much.
Yeah.
We've seen so much, like, we're always like, I guarantee you, we're like, all right, this is going to be what the scary thing is. And when it's not, it's so exciting.
I'll say this. First thing is comedy. Setup punchline is never as funny as
Mhm.
setup misdirect, setup punchline. or set up misdirect punchline. How like, and then the second thing I would say is Alfred Hitchcock has a expression about tension. You've probably seen or heard of it. It's like there's a bomb under the table and only one person knows about it, and or we're following one of the characters. And as long as one person doesn't know about it, the audience feels the tension because that guy's going to keep saying stuff. He's going to keep talking, and like, you got to get out of there, man. You got to get out of there. So you keep building that. Once the bomb goes off, emotionally and suspense wise, everything blows up. But the fear is in that suspense. So like
Right.
the clothing going up the stairs is scary, and we're watching it like kind of just drift inside, and that's obviously where the scare is going to be, right? But it's not. It's right behind it.
You should teach a class in Hollywood.
I should. I should teach a class anywhere and get some income. I'd love that.
We just want other movie people to learn these skills.
Right.
It's just all it is not giving the people what they want when they think it's coming.
Well, and maybe along those same lines, what I was super pleasantly surprised about with your film is the witch is shown during the daytime quite a bit, which that's a tough thing to pull off. You know, it's easier to make things creepy at night, but somehow you manage to have her, like, there's a few scenes where it's just the middle of the day and you see her in the background. And that's a hard thing to do. And like you were saying, you know, it's all practical effects. So I think you guys pulled it off marvelously, because that's a really tough thing. Horror in the daytime that's a feat, I would say.
Horror in the daytime is a tough feat. Filmmaking at nighttime, that's a tough feat. Nobody wants to be out till 4 a.m.
That makes sense. Okay, so was that part of your reasoning for making some of those scenes during the day?
I won't say it's part of the reasoning. I will say it's luck of without thinking about it. But
gotcha.
You know, having these long days in indie filmmaking without much rest, and then scheduling the next one days at night, a couple days at night, and then you switch to a morning shift or vice versa. It's exhausting.
Right. Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I think I was just really fortunate. The house was dark on its own, and our lighting setups were pretty practical. I mean, we had a small light panel that we kind of flew around with. So, yeah, great. Blake Studwell, best director of photography in Atlanta. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm just so lucky to have such really talented friends.
The next big scene I want to talk about is Mike coming back to check on Richard again. And just a really, really well done scene. Again, you have Mike, talking through a window with someone who can't speak. So it's just a very, right out of the gate, that's a tough scene, I would think, to film as an actor. And he does it marvelously. He kind of brings him a couple bottles, and, Richard's like, nope, I don't drink. He's kind of motioning that. He's like, nope, it's just soda. And then they have a heart-to-heart. And, Mike tells him about how his child died. He had drinks and was driving his son. However, what killed his son had nothing to do with him having drunk alcohol before that. Someone had thrown a block or a cinder block or rocks or something off of an overpass, and it killed his son. So there's some connection there with Richard, of course, who was not directly responsible for his child dying, but there's always in the back of his mind, could I have done something different? And even Mike says, if I hadn't have drinking, would there be the same outcome? So it's that you're living with the guilt of something that you didn't directly cause, but you're left to deal with that trauma, And I thought that was just a super interesting plot point. These two very different characters seemingly kind of bonding over that. And then at one point, and I forget the wording or whatever, but I think Mike asks Richard about the cut on his neck. And I forget how Richard uses his hands to say what it is, but then Mike points to his wrist as though to say he tried to commit suicide. So are we to believe, I'm assuming, that Richard had tried to commit suicide? Is that
yeah.
Okay. And I just wanted to make that clear because I assume that's what the case was.
But also Mike as well. And if you guys, I don't know if this is still a thing, but when I was younger, I know a lot of people who had tried or something had happened to them seriously, they would have that tattoo of an apostrophe.
Semicolon.
Yeah, sorry, semicolon. Yeah. So I put that in as a very small thing, but I wanted people to know that like that exists. Because I know a lot of people in like in the say the normal community, the people who aren't,
Or
are fortunate enough to not have to know about those things. They don't know about
Hmm.
those things, and I don't want to say it's a trigger warning or anything for people out there, but like getting to know someone who has that tattoo, whether it's for them or for someone else in support of anything, you don't have to call attention to it. It's just you kind of know something about that person in
Sure.
a way that, sure, like a Star Wars tattoo will tell you, depending if they have a
Right.
rebel or an imperial tattoo.
Ooh,
But
interesting. Yeah.
good
that
point.
semicolon tattoo tells you a lot about someone and what they're going through. And, it's if they're your bartender or if they're your Uber driver or if they're, someone you work with, it's like, it's one of those tattoos that's, it just says something. And I think, even though I don't talk about it in the movie, I just wanted it to be there so that at least people who know can maybe feel seen a little bit.
That's amazing.
Very full of heart for a horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking too when Mike's talking about how he still feels his son's little hand sometimes and he calls it phantom pain.
Oh.
It's just, man, again, that whole scene, Mike just knocks it out of the park, that actor.
Did you relate that line with Richard's late wife when she was talking about pregnancy? And it was such a realistic conversation to me where she's like I feel little hands and I'm
Oh,
trying
right.
Yeah.
Good call.
trying to hold them up, but I don't know if I can. Or I'm
Mhm.
butchering the line, I'm sure, but
Having
this to me
doubts
was
about
the
being a mother.
sentiment.
And
Yeah.
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 Yeah. There was definitely a similarity in there, which is just not being able to hold those little hands that, feel them. And yeah, there's a similarity there for sure.
I spend probably the majority of my waking hours criticizing the way that men write women. And I only say this to you now because I want it to mean something when I tell you that you write women extremely well.
Thank you.
Do you have a feminist origin story? And do you have any advice for these other men?
I don't have a feminist origin story. I told you a bit about my parents who are just good
Yeah.
people for all the terrible things they've done to me growing up, but they're really good people. And I don't love it when people are like, "Yeah, I'm a feminist. My mom and my sister are women." Oh, that doesn't make you a feminist.
They're also
Right.
Yeah.
people.
So, I mean, I think I liken it all to being a good person. I don't even, we empath because some people are empathic, some people aren't. And it shouldn't, I don't know how to teach anyone how to treat people correctly. People do or don't. And I appreciate you saying I write women's voice as well. And I would say as a director, you're a lot like a manager. And
Hmm.
I put females in scripts and I give them some direction, but I can't take any of the credit for the actors bringing those characters to life. So it's not as much for you could read the script and be like, "Oh, that's not." I don't believe in dialogue in the script. I think dialogue, just like a script in general, is a blueprint for a good story. And you hire the right
Mm.
people to do the right things because, set dressing is built into the story, props are built into the story. You know, I might be like, oh, that's not the right knife. That's the right knife. Um, Same thing with an actor taking a character and a good woman, a good man is going to make those characters come to life. So just give people the space to do their job well, and you could be surprised how great things can be. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm any better than anybody else at writing female characters. I'd just say I'm very fortunate to have some really talented people in my life.
I like that.
Very modest of
It's a lot of truth.
Well, that takes us to the next scene that just blew my mind. Just the most beautiful scene in the movie, probably, is when Richard puts his suit on, lights the fifth candle, takes a couple shots of mouthwash, and pours a couple additional glasses of mouthwash, puts them on the fireplace. And then Emma comes in dressed beautifully in red and embraces him, and they start slow dancing. I love how the room is lit, just like mostly candles, low lighting, just a beautiful scene.
beautiful. Is this a nod to The Haunting of Hill House?
No, but I love that show.
I don't repeat watch a lot of things, but I've seen that entire series many
If you
times.
guys want to do that show, please invite me back on. I love all of the Mike Flanagan shows, even the
Oh,
bad
sure.
ones I love.
Absolutely. We're big fans
Oh, yeah,
also,
for sure.
in general.
Yeah. I think I watched that and was like, "Oh, this is what I want to do."
That's awesome.
No, it really wasn't a nod, but now that you say it, I think about I forget what her name is like Lily, whatever her name. She walks into the house and she starts dancing by herself.
Well, her character name is
No, no, sorry, I called her Lily. I didn't remember. Is that the scene you're referring to? Like when she goes into the house and starts,
Yes.
oh yeah, that scene is that's how that episode ends, if I'm not mistaken. That's a great scene. Yeah. No, it wasn't supposed to be a nod to that, but I love that scene.
I think you could certainly tell people that it was now.
Yeah, I could. I think I cried every episode.
So we get Richard now leaving the house. He's got the doll. He leaves the house, goes into the barn, kind of hiding. And then we see the witch kind of creepily following him in. And what you were talking about with like the movements of this actress, I think it made this character. There's just something like there's like a stilted walk that she has that's like
I wondered
very
if she was a
uneasy.
contortionist, actually, like the
Oh, interesting.
the girl from The Ring. Like that's what it called up for
Mhm.
me, which is one of my favorite
Oh,
movies.
incredible movie.
He goes to attack her with the hammer, but then the witch turns into Emma. So, of course, he stops. And then she starts laughing maniacally as the witch approaches him. I thought this was just a very clever, quick scene that just really well done. I love how that plays out. And then the next morning, we get Mike showing back up at the house. He goes to the witch tree and digs up the picture of Richard and Emma.
And he's like, "What?"
And yep, he starts going to the house. He's like, Richard, where are you? What's going on, man? Doesn't hear anything. He finally gets in the house. He hears that phone ringing, which I think happens one other time, but I don't believe Richard answers it
And he
then.
doesn't.
So it's just
How is he going to answer it, Bill?
good point. Well, you can answer it, just not say anything. Anyway, so he goes upstairs and he ends up picking up the phone, and it's a young boy saying dad. Is that correct? If I'm remembering correctly? Yeah. Right.
It's his kid.
Yes. Which is just, again, heartbreaking. Eventually, I think he calls back again, same thing. He leaves the house, heads to the barn, and he sees Richard kind of like swaying uneasily in the corner, just kind of like real awkward. And by this point, he's got the crown of thorns, he's got the nails in his eyes, and he just whacks Mike with the hammer. Mike, as a last-ditch effort, tries showing him the picture of Richard and Emma, but then Richard just pummels his face with the hammer. And ultimate gore. My God. You guys went to town on this effect, I gotta say.
That was Midsommar elderly suicide level.
Oh, you're totally right.
That was talk to me level of face smashing.
Oh man, that's up there.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, that one from Midsummer was woof. That was rough. What is it? That like 12-foot wooden sledgehammer.
Oh my God.
Oh man. I probably used that image with the special effects artist for her to build that because I just love that image. And I love the image of Ari Aster as a behind the scenes shoot of him like moving the blood around. It's like,
oh, I've seen that.
That it makes me so happy to see him so detail oriented in something like that.
Oh, for sure.
And Chris is a really good friend in real life. So killing him in a movie was really fun. Even in such a heavy movie. It was
delightful.
Yeah, it was great. I loved killing him.
I would love to be killed in a movie. Are you kidding me?
Right? It's a badge of honor.
He's like, what about me in the sequel? It's like, I don't know, man. I'll figure it out for you.
Flashbacks. There's always
flashbacks. There you go.
Yeah, I'll figure it out for you.
So then, of course, after this horrible pummeling has happened, Emma calls for Richard outside of the barn, asks him if he's ready to come home. He starts walking out looking kind of normal again. I believe he's back to normal again. Tells her he doesn't want to be alone anymore and he wants them all to be together. We then kind of hear a baby crying in the background as they walk away and kind of disappear behind the tree. And I thought the movie was going to be over at this point. Little did I know. We get a little extra something. So we cut to the realtor showing up to the house with a young pregnant couple. And at first I thought, why did she not go in to spruce things up or send somebody in to do something? Because as soon as this couple walks in...
She's desperate.
Yeah, she is real desperate at this point. And at some point she says, "We stand behind our Hamza clearings," which I thought was kind of funny. Just like, yep, this is our guarantee.
Did you really get certified in that? Is that real?
No, that's not a real thing. But my wife worked in I think it was Hong Kong for a while, and a lot of expats who work there will buy or rent property that has had bad things happen. And I think that practice is called Hangzhe. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but there is this practice which basically means catastrophe house, where unlike in America where you don't have to disclose that stuff is disclosed there, and there's a lot of stigma. So if someone has like a normal death, like if they died of old age and went peacefully, there is no bad vibe from that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if someone is murdered, commits suicide, or drug deal gone wrong type thing, or person who is regularly engaged in bad activity, that can drive the price down if people are aware.
I have a super fun fact for you. In the U.S., it's state by state, but in Texas, where I live, you only have, Bill knows what I'm going to say. You only have to tell if they were murdered or if they were possessed by a demon.
I love that.
That would be a Texas thing.
I love that.
It's real.
I did ask when I bought this house, I asked the realtor, "Is this haunted?" And she's like, "How am I supposed to know?" And I was like, "I don't know. If it
Good
just
answer.
felt like I would ask."
Yeah, right.
Very neutral answer.
I mean, it wouldn't have
that.
changed anything for me, but I just wanted to see what she would say.
So the wife sees the creepy witch doll on the table, then sees Richard sitting on a bed in one of the rooms, which that right there scared the crap out of me again, just like sitting there calmly. And then Richard walks out, raises the hammer as the realtor says, "Oh, hi, Richard," which I thought was hilarious. And then we hear the sounds of him beating them with the hammer. And then our final scene, again, to bookend the first scene of the movie, he's laying with the witch who kind of like brings her arm over, and the end. Incredible ending. I love that you added that extra scene at the end. It just wouldn't have been complete if they had just walked away. There's just something about
we wouldn't
Richard
have
sitting
known
there.
that was a delusion and that in reality.
Yes.
He was now living with the crone.
Living with the crone.
Or, the dead equivalent of living, not really living.
Sure. Existing with.
Did you ever consider any other ending?
There were other like variants of kind of getting to that same point, but it was always that ending. It was always him and her in the start and him and her in the end. Him and her being a different start and ending, but always dealing with that. Yeah.
So speaking of her and him and her, knowing how grounded you are in mythology based on seeing Pollen, I'm just going to say the words maid, mother, crone. The the feminine life cycle, or just the life cycle, like depending how you look at it. So I think it cannot be an accident that we have Richard's wife Emma as the happy maid at the beginning of her storyline, and the unhappy mother, and then we have the crone as the crone. So I think this has to be about generational trauma of women, right? Or I am projecting my own trauma.
I don't think I was familiar with the phrase maid, mother, crone. So I love hearing that. So I think you gave me too much credit on being smart and knowing mythology. I've told you
it's just that you do it naturally.
I'm not a well-read person. I just kind of feel things. And I mean, you saying maid, mother, crone, like as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, that, and it kind of was like just like one of those little lightning bolts. I was like, oh, that's really, really an interesting way to kind of watch this through a lens like that and watch her character's progression. So, generational trauma is not necessarily something that I can fully understand as, as a Jewish person. There's, my separation from the Holocaust is pretty far. Whereas I have one friend whose dad died at a very young age who was a Holocaust survivor. He was very old dad. But my parents are very familiar with that. So, a lot of people make jokes or make light of it. And in my world, it's like, it's fine. It's a joke. It's from something so far back ago that I could not imagine it. In the same way you make a World War II joke or even that I start
Sure.
hearing kids who weren't alive at the time make a 9/11 joke. And so I
Oh yeah.
say, my understanding of generational trauma is not deep. I don't feel, I'm lucky enough to not really feel the depth of it. And I think all women probably feel generational trauma. I don't like in a way that men probably never will have to. Just in
Mhm.
general, there's nothing like, yeah, my dad was really hard on me, and that I'm gonna be, that's the kind of thing that just every guy is dealing with. Almost every guy deals with.
Right.
But I think, yeah, I think as a woman, it must be very difficult to escape certain like traumas that every woman has had at the same time or before. And I apologize if I'm speaking out of place on that, but
No.
I think in Pollen that was something I wanted. It wasn't generational trauma; it was the cycle of trauma, and
Yeah.
that's you brought up the witch being murdered, as a witch, this woman being murdered for being a witch because they blamed this town sickness on her.
But she was just a regular person. It's almost like you're saying women are people,
Almost,
and that may be
yeah.
controversial.
To
So
some people that is controversial, right? Which is awful.
sadly, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that was the point, right? I still don't know who the witch is in this movie. Like, I don't know if anyone can know because the story is from Richard's perspective, and even his memory is
Right.
tainted by her. So I
Mhm.
don't know if she's gaining strength to kill him, if she's desperate for love and is just trying to get to know him. I don't have that answer. I don't.
Could be
It's
both.
Could
interesting.
it
Be
could be
both.
it could be something different that I don't know, but this story is Richard's experience in that world. And I think in that world, Emma has no control. She's a memory who's being viewed by the witch for whatever reason. And so generational trauma made Maiden Crone. I didn't want the witch to be the bad guy necessarily. I don't necessarily know if Richard's the bad guy.
That's the thing about this movie. Like all of these people are just handed what they got,
Yeah.
and possibly in retrospect, like Richard maybe at some point could have turned things around, but maybe not. Like the the psychological things his wife was going through, like perhaps there's nothing that anyone could have done.
I do think that if he had have been a better, I don't want to say better, but if he had have been equipped to talk about things earlier on in their relationship, and she had have been equipped to feel her feelings and, maybe even talk to someone outside of him for help, for therapy or
Yeah.
however, not blaming anyone for that, but I think a lot of this movie comes down to communication. And, whether
Right.
it's Handyman Mike answering the phone or talking through the window or Richard and Emma not being able to talk, Richard not being able to talk, period, or the witch not being
Right.
able to communicate except by poisoning someone's thoughts. The entire movie is miscommunication.
I love that.
Oh, didn't think of it that way. That's heavy.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing I'd want anyone to take away from this movie, though, is if something's wrong and you think you need help, don't bother waiting to find out if you need help because you do. You don't need help.
Or
But
your spouse.
yeah, a friend, spouse, anybody. It's just listen to people if they call you. You might not be able to help them, but sometimes just listening is a lot. And if you are feeling that way, then just please just ask someone.
I think that is a beautiful place to wrap. Sorry we wore you out. It's so late where you are.
No, you know what? I appreciate you guys so much. Just letting, God, I've been so, so busy the past, like, the movie came out in October and I just finished the picture lock literally yesterday on my last movie. So this is like my first 2 days off.
So we caught you at the right time.
Yes. So I mean, this is like the first time I've really talked to anyone about the movie. So you've gotten all not to trauma dump my stuff, but this is the first time I've been able to talk to anyone about it. So it's been pretty
Awesome.
cool for me to just talk to two people who really saw the movie. So I appreciate it a lot.
Well, we're honored that we could be those people. So
So very much. I mean, this will be a big moment for us. And we just thank you so much for taking the time on your 2 days off.
Don't worry, I'm about to I have more work next week, and then I'm free again. We can do this again next week. After
Well,
next
for
we
your
week.
would
next
love to
film,
have
yeah,
you back to talk. I mean, if not sooner, to talk about I'm your host, whatever the final title
yeah,
ends up
It might
being.
wind up being
Uh,
that, but I don't know. But yeah, once that comes out, I would love to talk about it with you guys.
awesome. Well, thanks again, and yeah, let's keep in touch for sure. We'd love to have you on again if possible.
Thank you guys. I can't wait to hear more episodes from you guys. Bye guys.
So, should we rate this thing?
do we have to? I
I think
mean,
we do.
I'm ready to, but
Do you want to go first?
kind of don't want to turn his movie into a number because now it's like he's a human being. The human beings, Bill, making these movies.
Imagine
They should
that.
they should all get a trophy.
I agree.
So I think we had such a great talk with him that I don't need to belabor my comments is what I'm trying to
Sure.
say. But about this movie, it's a sad haunted house movie, which I love, but it also has empathy, which I love. Lots of tension and scares that were surprising, and more violence than I expected at the
Yes.
outset, right from a haunted house movie, but not in a bad way, just in a very like drives the story home kind of way. And plenty of social commentary, even if I did invent some of it myself. So to me it's analogous to the Spanish movie Veronica, which reminder everybody we covered on a previous episode. Has the same kind of like not happy ending.
Right. That's
Not for
interesting.
Veronica, not for Richard or any of the people that died, or his wife, who also died. It's really very nearly everything I want out of a supernatural horror. So for me, it's going to be a 5 screams out of 5, no notes. Your
Beautiful.
mileage may vary.
For me, this movie was a very pleasant surprise. I looked at it as kind of from like almost more of a filmmaking, where when it comes to like lower budget movies, this is what should be strived for in my mind, and especially after
Yes.
talking to him, and getting an idea of kind of how low the budget actually was. This delivered like a great small cast of really good characters, really well written characters. Super impressive gore that was used very sparingly, which again, like just very smart with how he used that. And a great story with a ton of nuance and just a really effective creature. And like I would mention, that the creature was shown, or the witch was shown during the daytime, which again scores tons of points for me because I think it's so hard to be creepy in the daytime. A lot of super memorable scenes, like we talked about with the hand, reaching out while his hand's reaching in, and
Never
the
forget
microwave
that one.
scene.
Never
No, the
forget the
microwave
microwave.
scene, and just really good use of tension, and the pacing was really great. And another really positive thing about it is for the amount of flashbacks that were included, it didn't hamper the movie's pacing.
They were pretty tight, and they did a lot, those flashbacks, to tell like the
Yes.
entire backstory, but in not that many minutes.
Right.
It felt to me that the two stories were equally as important,
I agree.
although the flashbacks were much shorter. What I'm trying to say.
So, with all of that said, I'm giving this film a very solid 4.5 out of 5 screams.
Wow, I'm very impressed. I feel like I'm winning you over. Am I winning you over to the haunted house side?
Maybe. This one, I mean, and part of me is maybe comparing it to Deadstream too, which was just not totally my
No,
cup of tea.
didn't do
Very
it for you. Yeah.
super tonally different, of course. These are like apples and oranges movies, like this one
Sure.
and Deadstream. So maybe I'm biasing a little bit based on the previous movie we watched, but for sure, I would watch this again. I do want to watch it again, actually, to kind of like unearth some of those things that he was talking about during our discussion. So I think I
Me
will be
too.
revisiting this one for sure.
For sure. I can go ahead and take us home.
Take it home.
Well, my dear denizens of darkness, it's time to check out from our spooky stay with I Will Never Leave You Alone and the cursed category All Alone in a Haunted House. Through Richard's ill-fated solitude and descent into the vengeful world beyond of the malevolent, but perhaps justified, Crone, we've traversed the terror of being trapped with nothing but ear trauma and a little bit of mouthwash and a restless spirit, to put it mildly. And can we just take another moment to thank the brilliant DW Medoff for haunting this episode here with us this evening? Clap, 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 clap. So what have we learned from this story? First, take your pregnancy blues and postpartum symptoms seriously. That's not even a joke. Second, never trust a religious parole opportunity. Finally, never trust a realtor who says all the spirits have been cleared out of the house. Now you know. So before you all start sewing your mouths shut and driving nails into your eyeballs, actually, please don't do that. Let's talk about what's next, because there's a storm brewing, my friends.
Ooh.
A couple of storms, in fact, because our next cursed category is strangers in a storm, exchanging glances. You know these movies, two poor souls thrown together by happenstance, kept together by the wrath of nature, and things get complicated. Our first foray into this tempestuous twosome will be Scare Me, the perfectly titled movie about two horror authors trapped in a cabin to wait out the weather by trading scary tales. So batten down the hatches, whatever that means, because things are about to get wild. Until next time, stay safe and dry, don't talk to strangers, and maybe stay away from those remote cabins in the woods and away from those haunted houses, for that matter. On that note, sleep tight, everybody.
Stay spooky.